everybody, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Musings Podcast. I am Griff from GA, and I'm just going to tell you, go ahead and make my Friday, because we have AEW Rampage now. We got Rampage to talk about. I am joined by Anthony and Sergi. At this point, you know, if we did stats on ourselves, we'd have to be the most common podcast lineup at this point, you would think. So you're probably getting tired of seeing us. But you know what? You're going to have to look at us today because we got a ton of stuff to talk about. First week of Rampage, new show, new commentators, new champions. I mean, let's just get right into it. Christian Cage and Kenny Omega, they opened up, first match ever on Rampage, and this was... I was not expecting what we were going to see in this one. I expected it to be a great match, and it was, but I did not expect the result that we ended up seeing. So, Sergi, let's just get right into it. What did you think about the Impact World title match?
Well, you know, I like to keep an open mind going into storylines. When they announced that Christian Cage had not one, but two world title matches scheduled. It was such an unusual situation. It's like there's nothing to compare it to. There's no like, well, when they've done this in the past, they've blah. It's like, when have you ever heard of someone saying, okay, you have a challenge scheduled for this title against this person, and then win or lose, you also have a second challenge for that same person for a different title. I mean, it's never happened before. So going into it, I was like, I have an open mind. I have no idea where they're going with this. I was theorizing like, well, they could, go for disqualification. They hardly ever use disqualifications.
I was thinking that as well.
They could have the ref catch the heels doing something. I definitely, in the power chart in my mind of what seemed likely, an actual title change was low, but I wasn't ruling it out. I was definitely surprised and pleasantly surprised. I think a lot of people felt that that this happening undercut the story they've been telling all along with Hangman, and I think that that's just a case of being too set in your own fantasy booking. It's like, okay, if at the end, without having a closed mind to it, you look back and say, yeah, that ruined it. Well, that's fair enough. But what good is it doing to decide in advance that this has ruined it? Like, let's let it play out. They've given us lots of reason to trust them. So let's see how that goes. For this night, was thrilling. If you weren't too caught up in, oh no, this ruins some other thing, it was in itself just an absolutely thrilling and amazing moment. And it was also an absolutely, it completely changed your idea of both wrestlers. It was such a different match for both of them, and an amazing match. It was, I mean, if you take a look at their stats, let me do that real quick. You're looking at, for Christian, you're looking at a match that looks a lot like his usual matches, except missing one thing, which is lots of selling. Most of his matches, he is on the back foot most of the match, and he has to hang on, survive, and hit that kill switch at the end. That's not the match he gave us. His mix of offense was very similar to what we usually see. But as far as the selling, he was not using the selling as his main storytelling tool like he often does. And Kenny Omega was just a very different match. He was, I mean, if you look at his typical match, it's just very balanced. He uses all kinds of offense. He uses them very interchangeably, in a very balanced way, and that's just not what we saw tonight. Last night, he was kind of all over the place. He was very focused on fouls and on strike downs. He had a very high strike down rate, but at the same time, his volume of striking was also high. It just gave the feeling of someone who's just overextending, overzealous. Overzealousness is what you saw from Kenny Omega, but at the same time, you also were not seeing a guy who the pace wasn't like really high. Like if you look back, I mean, on average, he usually has a moderate volume of offense. But his last three defenses against like really fast, small, younger guys like Ray Phoenix and Jungle Boy, he was using a lot of volume. And that wasn't here. There was just a couple of categories where he was throwing everything at his strike downs and at his fouls and relying on that, and it didn't work for him.
Yeah, what's so interesting about Kenny in this match is the reversals. You know, when you look at it in a 15-minute match, Kenny managed what did he manage? He managed 12 reversals in a 15-minute match. And this is a man who averages over 70 reversals an hour. In this match, if you were to extrapolate it out like that, this was 38. So whatever Christian was doing was really hurting the champ, and he couldn't do anything about it. And that was the interesting story for me, is that it was a different Kenny Omega. I mean, from an outsider's perspective, he looked like the world champ. I mean, everything he does is it's different than anyone else. And I was thinking about this to myself during the match and thinking like, man, what makes Kenny different is you have guys that are incredibly athletic, and we'll talk about one of them in a second, that just jump out of the gym and they're so fast and they're so quick. What makes Kenny Omega is his first two steps, he walks, and then he just explodes into the sprint, and it's so explosive, and it's so athletic, and it's so entertaining. And so he still brought that, but Christian was just on top of him from the beginning. And that's the story I didn't expect to be told. I figured that you would have Kenny being the dominant champion. If you were to have, look, I'm going to be honest, the possibility of Christian just winning the title tonight, I was like, it's probably not going to happen. You know, I'm like, is it? That's probably the least likely thing. But if it were to happen, it would be tons of shenanigans, and it would be like, you know, the Good Brothers accidentally hit the magic killer on Kenny or something like that. Like, it would have to be that level of interaction between Kenny and the rest of the Elite in order for him to lose the title. And it wasn't. You know, it was just Christian being a better wrestler, which was so interesting. I don't think it affected the Hangman story at all. I agree with you that I think people get too in their head about the fantasy booking, and they have this idea of how that story would have worked. I think the reality is this is for the Impact title. Christian proved he was better. By the time Hangman gets to Kenny, Kenny will have already beaten Christian again for the AEW World title. So
I don't want to. I want to give Anthony a chance to speak about it too, but I just wanted to expand on something you said, and it's that Kenny gave the impression, which he never does, really, of not. He didn't seem to feel like he should be intimidating his opponent. He seemed like he maybe was a little intimidated. That this is someone that, you know, to us we may see him as, you know, well, it's just Christian. You know, that was the reaction when he got announced of, like they said, the Hall of Fame worthy guy, and it's just Christian. Mm-hmm. But you got the impression that to Kenny, he was this guy that, like, this is someone that I grew up admiring. This is someone that as I was developing, I looked to as a model of this is how to do this, and now I have to face him. That's the guy we got tonight, and we never really see that because he's usually fighting guys who are younger than him or who he inspired them, you know? Yeah. And this time it was the reverse of that.
You make a really, really good point. Anthony, one of the things that's really interesting to me is in a match where Christian had about 2/3 of the offense, 62% of the match offense in this match, which, by the way, as Sergi says, is absolutely unprecedented, especially for Kenny Omega in a title defense. In a match that featured that, you still had the first 9 minutes. If you look at our cumulative flow of offense, the first 9 minutes is Kenny Omega with more offense than Christian, and then you just see Christian's explosion of offense in the last third of the match. How did they tell this story effectively, in your opinion? And if you believe they did, why why were they able to tell it in that way? Why did that work the way that it did?
So let me just start off by reading out this just great tweet from a person named Garrett Kidney. Christian Cage defeated Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship in the debut match of AEW's second TV show, just like we all expected when Christian returned from retirement in the Royal Rumble earlier this year.
This went down exactly as you thought it would.
Exactly. Everyone saw that coming. So in terms of story, I was very worried. Okay, from Dynamite when they said, okay, he's got the double victory, double chance and everything, and I was like, okay, I don't particularly like rematches, all that. I mean, I've done an entire 2 articles exposing how many rematches have been done in the last 6 months of all programming. So, I know all about rematches, a little too much at this stage. So to have them, 3 weeks apart is just, to me, is like, I don't really want that. However, I'm feeling much better about it. Now, you guys were all surprised about Kenny losing. I wasn't. That's because I watch Impact, and the current number 1 contender is, what's his name? Hang on, I'll quickly grab his name. Is Brian Myers, who used to be in WWE. He's the current number 1 contender. No way Kenny's having a match with him. A Christian match versus him is would fit much more Myers' wrestling style rather than Kenny. Obviously, the big question will be whether or not Kenny's also going to drop that Triple A to Andrade this weekend, which by the time this video is released, we'll probably know. I'm guessing yes. I think he'll lose that one, and then AEW will. Obviously, that will be the last one. Now, does that devalue what Kenny's done? Yes, it does. But no, it doesn't at the same time. So yes, it does, because we've now seen him. We've now seen him lose. Seeing a champion lose, it does make them seem okay. Cool, they're beatable now. So it does take away from that moment of that first time seeing him lose, okay? However, it also doesn't, because as long as we see a different style of character from Kenny now, rather than this very egotistical character, which is like, I'm all elite, I've got all the belts, blah, blah, blah. And we see a change in that to very possessive. Now, commentary did a really good job of putting the AEW belt over everything else. Yes. They were saying, this is the most prestigious, this is the most prestigious, this is the top, this is the top, this is the top. And they said that multiple times. The match itself, I feel that the two have not only a different type of match, but a lot more of a match in the tank. So, yeah, look, they really showed, I think, a lot of people that, this could be a good match. But Christian was always winning this one, especially with that Impact one. Before Impact, obviously, I was like, okay, maybe they'll do a DQ, maybe they'll do something to get around it, maybe they'll swerve us and have Christian written off and have someone else. But at the end of the day, Christian said, multiple years ago that I want to fight Kenny Omega. He's fought through injury, come back, worked his way up, and now he gets to fight him twice. Give the man his juice. He deserves the moment, and he showed us all he has a very good match in him. He had a very good match. The crowd was into it. The crowd on Dynamite, they were not too thrilled about it, but the crowd from Rampage, and I think crowd next week when he does the promo or something, will be also into it now. If he does, look, I think he'll lose the Triple A as well, and then we'll see more of a Smeagol version of Kenny, and if he drops up, my precious, that'd just be great. But I think that's sort of the version we're going to get, a very possessive, do anything, and I'd maybe even get a couple of people that he fights in between now and then, and we see the difference of his style. We just see the change where he goes from, okay, I'm very explosive. Yes, he's still got that, but he's got this just absolute assassin-like mentality of, I'm just going to destroy you. You're not getting my title. I'll do anything to keep this. And, that's how you build it, I think, personally.
Yeah.
I've got nothing really.
I would absolutely agree with you on that. The thing about I'm reminded of a debate that I heard a few months ago, and I think it had to do with coming into, I think it was WrestleMania with Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. And the story going in was McIntyre can't hit the Claymore on Bobby Lashley. That was the story. And then on the go-home show, and correct me if this wasn't WrestleMania, but on the go-home show, before whatever pay-per-view it was, McIntyre hit the Claymore on Bobby Lashley and pinned him. And there was this whole debate, I remember specifically between Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, where Dave was saying, no, this is old school, you pin the champ, you show that he's beatable, and Brian's saying, no, the whole story is that he couldn't hit the Claymore, he couldn't pin the champ, so now he just does it. I think, depending on the context, it's okay for champions to lose, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, in context sometimes, but you don't want to be making a habit of it. You look at WWE, their champions are losing every other week, okay? This is the first time Kenny's been beaten in a long time, but it does take, and you've got to admit, and everyone's got to admit, that no matter the way we put it, it still takes away from Hangman's moment. Yes, we've all fantasy booked this a little bit. I'm guilty of this myself, but still, Kenny's, a lot of people will say this, that Kenny's first loss should have been from Hangman, because, it does, although, it's also a story about Hangman becoming a winner, not Hangman beating the unbeatable. So, there's a couple different stories, and I think everyone wanted to go in let's go in the Kenny, Hangman beating the unbeatable, where it's actually a story of a loser becoming a winner. And that's where I think it's, it's very interesting to see those different aspects of the story and where it could go. It could have gone in all different ways. And I think that's the thing that we should all appreciate, that tonight no one knew, apart from me, obviously, which way this was going.
And probably Jacob.
Look, it could have gone in any way. There was talk about DQs, talk about time limit draws, talk about everything, No one knew, and that's the beauty of wrestling. If no one knows, then it's entertaining. It will keep you on the edge of your seat until it happens. And the fact that Kenny lost due to the distraction from the Young Bucks, he didn't win. Christian didn't win on his own. He won due to turning that distraction around. And that's why I'm saying they've got a different style of match, and Kenny will be a different wrestler at All Out than he was tonight. Especially if he loses the AAA.
I totally agree, but this is, talking about the Hangman story, I feel like, I think some people had this thing about Hangman being, he's going to hand Kenny Omega his first loss as champion, and it's going to be to take away the title. For me, that was not an important part of the story. I didn't really care about that. I cared about, and still care about, Hangman winning the title from Kenny Omega. That's the important part. Because let me ask you this, and this is just, it could be rhetorical, or if either of you have an actual response. Ever since Andrade got out of WWE and made it known that he was going to challenge Kenny for the AAA title at Triple Mania, I think most people assumed that he was going to win that. Whether, the original story, presumably, and we're just making an assumption here, was that Hangman was going to beat Kenny at All Out. So even if that was still the story, Triple Mania would have happened first. Andrade would have gotten his challenge first. So would it have affected the story if Kenny had won this match but then lost to Andrade? Would we be talking about the same thing? Because I think the important part of the story between Hangman and Kenny is not Hangman snapping some undefeated streak. The important thing is Hangman beating Kenny Omega for the title, and you've got time to build up Kenny Omega as AEW champion, because you're absolutely right, Anthony. Commentary did such a great job of building up that AEW title. This is the important one. This is what matters. And Kenny's going to have another month or two or more before Hangman gets the chance at that title. And I think that we're getting into the crescendo. We're getting into the third act that I have thought about. I've said that this is definitely a potential for a long time, is that Kenny is going to snap and he's going to snap in a way that, he becomes, 7-star Kenny Omega. I think we could see that. I think we could see Kenny Omega going, look, I'm done with this. I'm done doing all the antics. I'm done doing all this stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start killing people to become the world champion, to stay the world champion. Like you're saying, Anthony, this is like he becomes so possessive of the world title, and we see the kind of Kenny Omega that a lot of people were clamoring for, is that same level of wrestler. Now, whether he's physically able to perform at that level consistently, I don't want to speculate on that. But let's assume for a second that he is. I think that would be where he wants his character to go.
Yeah, I agree completely, Griff. I think that one thing that you need to keep in mind about this angle is that it puts a seed of doubt in Kenny's mind as to whether he can rely on outside interference as a method of holding on to his gold. And that might lead to him changing his strategy to rely on only what's within the ring. Don't bring the Elite into it. Maybe not even have Callis interfering for him, and rely on his own, and in a way that like Anthony was saying, in the Gollum sort of way of just being desperate to hold on to what he has left, especially if he's going to lose to Andrade as well. And so Christian is going to be facing Brian Myers. For those who may not be familiar with the name, that's formerly known as Kurt Hawkins. So that should be interesting. And I think that the Hangman story is not harmed. I agree completely that Hangman's story has never been about can I beat an unbeatable guy. It's can I beat Kenny, who I've never been able to beat.
Yeah.
It's not that nobody can beat Kenny. It's that I've never been able to beat Kenny. I've always felt that Kenny is above me specifically. And do I have the confidence level to take on someone who I've always felt is a level way above me?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. So for as hot as the crowd was on Rampage, they needed a little coaxing on Dynamite, and there was one man who was responsible for getting that crowd up and rolling on Dynamite in that opener, and that was, of course, Dante Martin. Look, this is, we're going to talk about this because this was also something that Kenny was involved in. This was obviously not a match that Kenny felt like, or that anyone felt like Kenny would lose, or that he would even be troubled in, until it actually happened and Dante Martin gets in there. And look, this match, when it was announced, was kind of like, that Kenny and Matt Sydal have chemistry. We've seen them in a singles match. It was the best match maybe of Matt Sydal's career. At the very least, it was his best match in years against Kenny Omega. It was a great match. So we know that those two can work. We knew that Dante Martin has this level of athleticism, but to actually see it come together like this, for Dante Martin, who is, I believe, 20 years old, for him to be able to perform like this in the biggest spot of his career, because he and his brother went against the Young Bucks. That's definitely true. But that was during the pandemic era, and no one really knew who he was. The expectations were pretty low. The expectations for this is people knew who Dante Martin was. You're in front of a live audience. You are on Dynamite, and you're fighting the world champion and the Young Bucks. So this is as big as it gets. And Dante Martin showed up, and this was just unbelievable. His hot tag sequence, you could hear the fans start to wake up. Like, they didn't care that much about this match. And then Martin does more stuff, and by the end, the fans want Dante Martin to be world champion. That's in Bleacher Report's review of this. I think it was the Bleacher Report reviewer who said, if Dante Martin had pinned Kenny Omega and walked away with the AEW world title, the fans would have been happy. And that's absolutely true with what happened here. I wasn't a massive fan of the match as a whole, but I was a massive fan of Dante Martin. I thought, look, you just can't give enough credit to what he was able to do. Anthony, as an opening match, I feel like this this did what it needed to do because you got the fans involved with Dante Martin's incredible athleticism. But what did you think about this one?
Dante's a great wrestler, and anyone who's seen anything he's been doing lately, his last big match was against Sydal, where it was sort of like past versus future. The good thing is that with AEW, we all talk about the next generation of, Jungle Boy and all that. So we've got the current generation, we've got the next generation. Dante Martin is that the next generation, and they're already starting to build that up where you've got guys like 2.0 Garcia all showing up,
Yeah, Wheeler Yuta, I think if they sign
Wheeler
him,
Yuta as well.
that.
He's got to be staying. Especially Fightful reported that he actually went to a WWE tryout and was turned down.
Yeah, I saw that report. We'll talk about his match later. But yeah, you're absolutely. I'm with you on that one. AEW would be very, very silly not to have these guys on some sort of deal. Obviously, we know that they've got this tiered deal where you get different tiers. I'm imagining, a lot of these guys have that sort of a deal. So, yeah, look, he's going to be around for a while. Dante Martin's got all the time. I hope that they give his partner the same treatment so they can see he gets some time to shine as well, so we can be reminded how good he is as well. Yeah.
And then let these two guys go back into that tag division. And what we talk about, how stacked that tag division already is. It is overstacked. Like, there's just so many teams in there. It is quite frankly one of the best tag divisions you've ever seen. It's so good. It is insane the amount of good top tier champion worthy talent. These guys are all going to be future champions, and it's great to see. In terms of the match, obviously, what can you say? Like, he just stole the show. Yeah. And that's saying something. You're in the ring with the current AEW champion, the two tag team champions, and the Sydal brothers, both who are doing good work, and you are the thing that people are talking about after it. It just shows, he's got it made there. He's got a long career in front of him. So let's hope he just stays healthy and keeps doing things. And pretty much the comment of the night from that one was, hey guys, I think the Matrix is down.
I want to tell you this. So I was watching this on my couch, and my dad was next to me, and he had kind of fallen asleep. But so he was kind of half watching it. And I talked about him before that he's not a wrestling fan at all. But when I got into it, he started to watch a little bit. So he was falling asleep during the early parts of this match, and then I can show you exactly where he started to wake up. And if you're watching on YouTube, this is why you should be watching, because we get to show you these things. We'll show you the flow of offense chart, and just take a look at the 7 to 8 minute mark, and that's pretty much where my dad started waking up. It was when Dante Martin hit a drop kick, a standing drop kick on, I believe it was Matt Jackson, who I think, you know what, I want to get this correct so that we can so that I can tell you exactly. Yeah, so Matt Jackson is 5'10", and Dante Martin from a standing position missed him high with the drop kick. Like this, that's how athletic this guy is. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And Anthony, I'm totally with you. Look, this tag division is stacked, but in an age where it is almost impossible to get over just by your wrestling. You have to have character. You have to be able to cut promos. You have to be able to do that. I'm not saying Top Flight. I'm not saying Dante and Darius Martin can't cut promos, but if they can't, it's going to be okay, because there's exceptions to every rule, and these guys, in my opinion, are the exceptions to the rule that you need to have character. Their wrestling alone gets them over because they're great sellers. They're incredible athletes and people care about what they do. But if you remember Dante's match with Matt Sydal or with Miro for the TNT title, the dude can sell as well. So he can be a convincing babyface, and then those comebacks where he's like the Young Bucks on steroids. I mean, he is moving, he's never stops, and he jumps like 11 feet in the air. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like, it's hard to describe because I'm confident in saying we've never seen athletes this talented in wrestling before. I mean, these are the kind of guys that in an alternate universe, they'd be Olympians. You know, they'd be running track. They'd be making millions of dollars playing football, you know, or something like that. Like that's the level of athletic talent that we're talking about with these guys. And I'm just so glad that they decided to wrestle because we get to see him, and hopefully we'll get to see him every week moving forward.
They certainly could have done something else, no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got the talent for whatever they chose. Back in the day, they called Pac or Neville the man who gravity forgot, and it's like Dante Martin is the man who, you know, bullies gravity. Like gravity gives Dante Martin its lunch money. It's
Exactly.
It's just like, how? Wait, what did I just see? And like Anthony said, it is just like the Matrix is down. There's a glitch in the video game that we are apparently in. Oh, and also they were talking about like, well, what are the people making the AEW video game gonna make of this? It's like,
exactly.
We have this thing called a physics engine for video games, and well, you've broken it.
Yeah, well, no,
sorry.
well done. That's a great question because it's you're not. What's the button for, you know, doing a crossbody that someone has to jump in order to take? Like, what? I'm not sure the button for that, but you know, they got some time to figure that out.
It was amazing. It was really something, that whole match, and I think it really begs the question of, I mean, it's just a really unfortunate situation with his brother. Darius has missed this whole rise that he's had, and when he comes back, is he going to be overshadowed? Is it going to be, you know, the whole HBK Janetti kind of thing where one brother always has the shine on him? Or, you know, I mean, I don't remember, honestly. They had like a couple matches before unfortunately Darius got hurt. And yeah, it's just a question of, is he going to be more focused on singles going forward, or when his brother gets back, are they going to refocus on the tag team division? And if they do, what are we looking at? I mean, if considering what we've seen from him in singles, if Darius, you know, genuinely keeps up with him, and they're both that impressive, and that impressive in tandem, you know, what kind of a tag division are we looking at?
That's
especially
a really
if they can give the tag division more time now that they have Rampage, because I mean, the really great tag teams have been in cooling mode, as our great new writer was talking about the kind of moribund state of the tag team division. What's that guy's name?
Is it Hugh Jones? I think wrote that article.
Hugh Jones, yes, great new writer that we have, wrote a great article about how the tag team division is kind of in a cooling mode right now, and you know, if Darius gets back and they refocus on the tag division right when now we have Rampage and they have time to really refocus on the tag division, what kind of tag feuds can we expect to see, and how thrilling is that going to be?
Yeah, and it's gonna as far as integrating them into the upper echelons of the tag division, because it's gonna be hard not to, just based on Dante Martin himself. And Darius, from what I remember, I mean, the two are very similar. It's not that, assuming that Darius can get 100% healthy, I mean, with things like this, with long-term injuries, you never know what the effects might be, but assuming that he can return to his pre-injury levels, there was not some wide gap between him and Dante. So, I think if we do see that again, it's going to be hard to keep him away from the upper echelons of the tag division. Right now, if you look at the tag team rankings, 3 of the teams in the top 5 are baby faces, and one of them in FTR, they are heels, but people would love to see them win the titles. So they're kind of in a weird space. The only for sure heel team right now in the tag rankings is Private Party, and I don't think Private Party's getting near the titles at this point. So there's a lot of babyface teams near the top right now. Now, that being said, Varsity Blondes are still a little far away from being able to compete at that level. Jurassic Express, I don't think they're going to be a team for long. I think Jungle Boy, his true calling is going to be as a singles wrestler. I think everyone agrees on that one. And the Lucha Brothers, I mean, there's been talk about potentially them turning heel and joining Andrade and doing this whole thing. We've talked about this on the podcast before. So it is actually possible that there won't be a ton of babyface teams left. You know, you would have Proud and Powerful and not a lot else. So there might actually be a lane for Top Flight in the near future, depending on what happens there. And if there is, I would really like to see it, because for me, I read that article by Hugh, and I think it's great. I think it's really well thought out. As far as story goes, the tag division is a little stagnant, but AEW's tag division has always excelled because the work that the tag teams do, that's what has made AEW special when it comes to tag team wrestling. In my opinion, no company does tag team wrestling better than AEW. Just the quality of their matches on a consistent basis is what draws people to watching those tag matches and now watching the trios matches that they do. So Top Flight really embodies that they just, when they're wrestling, you have to watch. They are must-see TV. And that is sort of that's how the Young Bucks won the titles. That's what the story was. The Young Bucks, you had to watch the Young Bucks when they were champions. Now they've added these characters, but Top Flight can be the same, and the Lucha Brothers are the same. You know, it's just when they're on, you got to watch. I mean, it's just that simple. So there may be a lane there for Dante and Darius, and I hope there is, because I mean they are just so much fun to watch. So I hope there is some lane there for them.
Quick question while we're talking about tag teams. Who's facing Young Bucks at All Out?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because they've got Jurassic Express next week,
which I was surprised about, by the way. That I
was as well, because if you remember last podcast, I said, I actually don't know if I said it on the podcast, but I dropped in our chat. I said, I reckon it's just Jurassic Express at All Out, and I was like, you know, I was very close. It's only a couple of weeks out, but you know, you've now got two to 3 weeks before All Out. So, who are they fighting?
I mean, maybe the Lucha Brothers. That was the indication I sort of got.
They are heating them up. Like, they've been fighting, and this is something that they do quite regularly. They've been having a lot of matches on Dark and Elevation lately. They had 2 back-to-back last week. Judging from the photo that Penta posted, I'm assuming that there's going to be some this week as well.
And fighting at a high level, by the way. Those matches were really good.
Yeah. Obviously, the Acclaimed have been removed from the rankings altogether because, obviously, Caster's not available at the moment. So you will have Jurassic Express lose. We've had Varsity Blondes lose recently. That would put... Then you'd probably do... I'd probably put a Private Party versus Lucha Brothers match on for number 1 contender, and then have the Lucha Brothers as the number 1 contenders at All Out.
I'm with that. Sergi, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I think that Jurassic Express are the challenger. I don't think that the story is that anybody's looking past them. The Lucha Bros, the main thing that tells us that that's a good possibility is that they've been getting the wins, that they've been getting tag team matches regularly, as opposed to, you know, not that long ago they were doing singles matches, or they were mixing it up within the trio in a Freebird rules kind of way, and working with Pac. And also, Pac specifically said, leave Andrade to me. You guys focus on becoming tag champs. So the story is there that they are on the hunt. So it's not much time to build that up, but I certainly wouldn't mind that there's not that much time to build it up. I selfishly want to see Mask versus Hair rather than it being over the titles, but that could be for the future.
That'd be kind of cool. I mean, it feels like that would be, these two guys, or these two teams rather, have felt like they're they're perpetually connected from the beginning of AEW. They have history. They had what was, in my opinion, the best AEW match for a long time. It was that ladder match that they had very early on in AEW's history, which, in my opinion, was the best AEW match probably until Bucks versus Hangman and Page. I mean, we can get into that debate some other time, but the point is they had this fantastic match, and they've just seemed to always be connected. So maybe that is where it goes, and maybe it's down the line. The Lucha Brothers have turned heel, the Young Bucks have turned face, and you do it that way. I don't know, but I'm with you. I feel like even if it does happen at All Out, that won't be the end of the very long-term story between the Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. And I hope it's not, because it's impossible for them to have a bad match. I mean, it would be physically impossible. Like, if they tried to have a bad match, they wouldn't be able to do it. So the more they fight, I am good with that. Let's talk about the main event of Dynamite. Let's talk about Chris Jericho versus Wardlow. Now, there was a video released on the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel talking about how Miro is the next generation of monster heel, how he's changing the game. His match with Lee Johnson changes a lot of the ways that we will look at how monster heels perform. This Wardlow is a traditional monster. I mean, he fought this exactly like you would expect. He had 67% of the match offense. He threw 28 strikes, so it wasn't even that Jericho was like peppering him with shots, and they didn't do any damage until they did, the way that Lee Johnson did with Miro. It wasn't even that. I mean, Wardlow didn't let Jericho get anything in. In terms of big offense, Wardlow was 13-4 in that category. This was as monster heels get. And for that reason, I actually liked it, because I think it was a throwback to the old school. I think Wardlow looked like a beast. I think Jericho, he plays a good babyface when it comes to selling, because he really looked like he was in pain. Not the same kind of pain that he looked like when he was fighting Nick Gage, but the wrestling pain, not like there's glass in my arm pain, which he's good at selling. So I liked this match. I did. I know that people have mixed feelings about it, so hopefully we'll get into that. But I enjoyed this. I really did. Sergi, what did you think about this one?
It was fine. I definitely think that as Dynamite went on, the first half of the show was just it really kind of blew the second half of the show out of the water in terms of just, it was a little bit of a slope downward, which is not really what you want in a wrestling show. But I mean, it wasn't too bad. It was a fine match. It served its purpose in the story, in the sense that that MJF caused his own downfall, caused his own failure to achieve the goal that he wanted of avoiding the Chris Jericho match. It could have been more blatantly just MJF's fault and not Wardlow's fault at all for me, but at least a gesture was made in the direction of, this wasn't Wardlow's fault. MJF's attempts to influence the outcome, which implies MJF's lack of sufficient trust in Wardlow to get the job done, is what cost Wardlow the match and what cost MJF the stipulation. But I think that if you look at their stats, it's interesting. Wardlow, in terms of his mix of offense, this was absolutely a typical match for him, except in one category, which was counters. He didn't use counters as much as usual, and that makes sense. He had nothing to counter. He wasn't getting any offense, except for, Chris Jericho had something. His mix of offense wasn't really at all unusual, other than just being suppressed, understandably. Most of the categories were lower than usual just because he wasn't able to get much offense in, and his strikes were extremely suppressed, and used strikes much at all, didn't have much of an opportunity to. Yeah. But relied on flying, which is very typical for someone in the small man position. This is the first small man match he's worked in AEW. He's hasn't been up against any monsters until now. So it's atypical for him in that sense. And then, it's unusual in that situation to get in much submission, but Jericho did because, of course, the Walls is, one of his real signature moves. So that's a little bit of a different situation because it's Jericho. The Floyd spot, it's a callback to something that has been a part of his character almost the whole time he's been in AEW, and it helped to protect Wardlow. Not maybe as much as I would have liked, but at least some. Of course, Floyd plus the never kicked out of Judas effect, that's a pretty good combination to say, okay, well, Wardlow not kicking out of that isn't nearly as big a deal as if he had fallen even to the finisher alone.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's interesting to me also, no pin attempts for Wardlow during this entire match. And they did, and the commentators did sell it. He hit the F10, and the commentators sold it like MJF told him to inflict as much pain as possible. For any other character, I would have been like, well, that's bullshit. Just win the match. But for MJF, I believe it. MJF is that guy who sat there and was like, Wardlow, if you have this guy, if he is dead to rights, if he is never getting up, I want you to hit him again. And MJF is that kind of guy that I believe would say something like that. So that part of it worked for me. And as you say, it ended up, working to his detriment. Anthony, I know that this story, the Pinnacle Inner Circle and Jericho and MJF, I know that this has been very hit or miss for you, often miss more so than hit. But this is, as far as we know right now, the penultimate chapter. This was the fourth labor, so we've got one left to go. Did this do enough for you to justify its placement and justify what is eventually going to be the fifth and presumably final labor of Jericho?
No, can't be over yet. I'm so tired of this entire thing. Look, I'm not really going to talk about the match. Sergi just done a great job of the breakdown. I can't top that. I'm not going to try. I guess I'm going to talk about the ending. Okay, so that's something Sergi didn't talk about. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So MJF comes out and says, "Okay, your fifth one is." So the bad part is, you're not getting Judas as the entrance. Now, obviously, MJF has been tweeting like crazy, saying, you guys aren't going to remember it. Everyone's going to sing it. Okay, we all know. Everyone's going to sing it. MJF's going to be annoyed. In terms of the match, I already knew what was happening. I probably could have told you exactly what I thought was going to happen last week. It wasn't surprising. I pretty much called exactly what was going to happen. In terms of the bad, it's like banning Judas. I guessing the motivation for it, and they kind of did this about during Rampage tonight, where they're talking about that energy from the crowd. Obviously, MJF thinks that energy from the crowd is what's making Jericho overcome these labors. So he's trying to take that from him. But we all know everyone's going to sing that song, and they're probably going to sing it louder than ever. The stipulation, now, it's good and bad. Good is that he's learned. Now, if you remember his last true one-on-one fight against Moxley, he did the exact same thing. You cannot use the paradigm shift. However, he lost when Moxley illegally used it. This time he's put it in that if you use the Judas effect at all, you instantly lose. So that way, the same thing that with that ref spot can't happen again. You just instantly lose. So, that's a good character growth moment. And, one of those small details that I really, really like from AEW that, he's clearly learned from what's happened there. In terms of everything, I think this is going to go one of two ways currently, okay? I'm in two minds about this. I haven't really thought too much about it because I've been thinking all about Rampage for the last, couple of hours, but we'll get into that.
Understandable.
So two ways that I think it can go down. Either one, MJF beats him, clean as whistle, we're done. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Miro. Although Miro's not God. Whatever. The other one is that, and this is the one I think is going to happen, Jericho beats him. MJF then demands a match at All Out, where something really big is put on the line. You know, this whole thing was obviously Jericho putting on that he wants to fight MJF. I don't know whether or not MJF is going to win next week. I'd like to think that he would. That, you know, it's just to clear he's going to win. But then the case is, okay, you've got Jericho and you've got MJF. What are both of them doing it All Out? You know, it's too soon. Are they going to miss it? Are you going to miss two of your biggest drawing people off of that card? And if you're looking at, you know, the card currently, you have three people that are very big draws. So you've got Orange Cassidy, Jericho, and MJF. These are all proven number draws. And I know pay-per-views are different, you know, buy rates and all that, but these are still three very big people, and none of them have all-out plans as of yet. So it'd be very weird for me to not have them have a match at All Out. So I think Jericho might win, or it might come to a draw, or something will happen that forces them to have a match at All Out. I don't think that this is quite over yet, unfortunately, as much as I want it to be over. But it just goes to show, if you really have a look at it, you know, we got more interference from Sammy and that, and next week we got Sammy and
Sean Spears announcing something. Obviously, they're announcing probably something for All Out or something beforehand. Who maybe something at, you know, one of the Dino. I think it might be something. I think they might have a Rampage match. Actually, I reckon they'll be on Rampage next week. I think maybe we'll see. Anyway, so they're going to announce something. I reckon it's going to be a Rampage. Yeah, you know, it's just. What even was the point of keeping them together at this point? You know, when we go back and look at that Stadium Stampede, I said at the end of that, I said the wrong team won here. You know, Inner Circle did not need to win. I know that they did it for, you know, the babyface thing, but when you really look at it afterwards, you know, Sammy could have just helped him because he was helping him. Like, you know, he doesn't need to be Inner Circle. You know. I don't know. I'm just tired of this. I want it to be done. The labors of Jericho have gone from something very exciting and unique to something that's, I feel, is just that they've not stuck the landing. They've opened really, really hot, and they've done such a great job up until this Wardlow match, and next week is just, again, it's not at the same level as where we were with, you know, Juice and Gage. You know, it's not at that level, unfortunately, and that's, you know, it's what it is. A lot of people are probably not going to agree with me, but that's, you know, it's my opinion, and that's just how I feel. I actually think a lot of people do agree with you, which is why it's something that's very bizarre to me. I don't want to rant. I'm not telling anyone that they're wrong. You know, anyone can feel the way they feel. But for me, we as an AEW community talk so much about long-term storylines, right? Like, it talks so much about, well, this makes sense for the characters, this makes sense for this, and that's really good. The fact that we loved Nick Gage, we loved that him showing up, and it was this incredible moment. And look, I loved it as well. But that was Nick Gage is a complete non sequitur. I mean, he had never been mentioned. He has not come close to being mentioned by anyone involved in this story, not on Dynamite, not on Twitter. I mean, no one has talked about him, and suddenly Nick Gage shows up. It's great. But from a storyline perspective, Wardlow being the final labor makes a lot more sense than Nick Gage being the second labor. So what I don't understand is why people had such an issue with Wardlow when they didn't have an issue with Gage. You know, I feel like I didn't have an issue with Gage, because I don't have an issue with Wardlow. I actually think that I really like the way this is going. I think Wardlow made a lot of sense. I think for two labors, at least Hoovy had been mentioned before, as we know, because Jacob called it. So at least he had been mentioned. But there would have been, other people that you could have fit into that. So for those two matches, Gage and Hoovy, that were such surprises, that were such shocks, and specifically Gage, to go to a predictable one, to go to, yep, it's Wardlow, it's the War Dog, it's this giant monster that Cody had to moonsault off the top of a steel cage in order to beat. That's who you need at this moment. To me, that made a lot of sense. And Wardlow was the guy, and he looked like that during this match. And you needed MJF cheating and doing his whole heel shtick. You needed a baseball bat shot from Jericho. You needed the babyface to cheat. And then you needed one of the most protected moves in the world of wrestling in order to beat him. To me, that's exactly what I wanted to see from this match. I wanted to see, the whole point is Jericho is overcoming odds that MJF has put up in front of him. And up until, through Gage and Hoovy, those odds were completely unpredictable and you had no idea. This one was the predictable one. This was the one that we knew what was going to happen, and Jericho did it anyway. And to me, good stories, they need a little bit of that. You can't be unpredictable every single step of the way just for the sake of being unpredictable. It's like, when you talk about WCW in the late 90s, having a swerve for the sake of a swerve, there's no reason for that. There was no reason to swerve Wardlow out of this spot just because some people were saying, well, we got Nick Gage, now we're going to get Wardlow. Yeah, you're going to get Wardlow. That's the point. MJF's character would give him Wardlow. So while, if people don't like it, and Anthony has not liked it this whole time, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think this is a case of the story went from being unpredictable to being predictable, and I think for a lot of people that just kind of it threw them off, and they were like, oh, well, Wardlow was predictable. Yeah, he was. So now this match with MJF, the reality is it's unpredictable because we all figured that Jericho versus MJF was going to happen at All Out. Well, it's not. It's going to happen next week. So is it going to happen at All Out? Are they going to get a rematch? Is this the point where we're going to get a DQ? Because MJF would be the guy to do it. And, the classic heel stuff, you can't use your finishing move. You can't use your theme. I mean, look, MJF is a classic heel. He's an old school heel. Wardlow is an old school monster. And this worked for me for that reason, probably because Jericho knows how to work with old school people. Jericho knows what he's doing. He's been an old school heel and he's been an old school babyface, and he can do both. So that's it. This match works for me on that level. But again, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. I'm not telling you you're wrong. Just giving my opinion on the matter. Let's go from old school monster to now the new school monster. Let's talk about Miro on Rampage, where he defends his TNT title. This match wasn't much of a match. It was 3 moves from Fuego del Sol. It was 3 moves from Miro. The Bulgarian drop, as Jericho called it, which I'm down with. I think we should use that now. It's not the Samoan drop when Miro uses it. It's a Bulgarian drop. The massive kick and then the game over. Look, this was about the story, and I'm a sports fan, right? I have been my whole life. This kind of thing it happens in sports all the time. If any of you are familiar with like college football, for example, every year around this time, we see college football players, walk-ons, get offered scholarships. And it's always in these cool ways, and they have like a friend or family member, and they offer them the scholarship, and they do all this. And it's a really cool moment, and it's really emotional. That's essentially what this was. This was offering. Sammy Guevara comes out and tells Fuego he's all elite. The fans go nuts. Look, it was a great moment. Anthony, you are a regular viewer of Dark and Elevation. You've been familiar with Fuego from the beginning. I know that you've been on the Fuego del Sol bandwagon for a long time. So as someone who has been involved in this story and knows the ins and outs of it, give us your perspective on what happened on Rampage.
So first of all, our good friends at Body Slam and Cassidy Haynes, who we've had on the show before, reported that the only two people who knew about the contract was Sammy and Tony Khan. That Fuego had no idea.
I got that sense that he didn't know. It was happening.
And you could tell. So, I'm so glad that that he reported that, because it was just, amazing, a moment. You could hear that pop, and the key thing, and Meltzer, was it Alvarez or Meltzer said this? I can't remember, but one of them said he got rewarded for getting himself over. And that's what this was. And Sammy said that, pretty much himself. Your win-loss record is 1-50, but who cares? Everyone loves you. Mm-hmm. You're all that was a great moment. In terms of the match, Miro is doing the best work. Now, there was actually a promo that he shared himself. AEW didn't share this one, but it was just fantastic. He's doing such great work. And ever since her 90 days was up, CJ, aka formerly known as Lana, has been posting pictures of herself doing the splits, waiting for Miro's reward with the hashtag pre-celebration, because he always talks about her being able to do splits, and she's always now posting before his matches, getting ready for Miro or waiting for Miro to come home for his reward. It's just, them two are doing absolutely amazing. Miro's doing the best work. This character is crazy. His selling is next level. I bought that third tornado DDT so much. I knew he wasn't going to win, but for a moment I was like, they're not actually. It was a moment, but the fact that I got into it that much for that one moment. But it's long-term storytelling, because they said it. Last week we saw the kinks start to come forth. Mm-hmm. That high-flying, speedy sort of wrestler. And they said it on commentary, Lee Johnson showed us that he's susceptible to this sort of attack. Yeah. And Fuego today hit him with 3 DDTs and nearly got the job done, and you could see in his face as soon as he got up, he's so angry about it. So, they're building up that whoever beats him has to be someone with very fast offense. I was thinking it was going to be Sammy, the people that it could have been, because I was thinking, okay, is it going to be Jungle Boy or is it going to be Sammy? But both of them just seem so far away from that position. I thought that, I don't know who he's going to fight at All Out. I'm hoping he gets a match at All Out. He bloody deserves it. But I don't know who they're going to get him to kill. I'm assuming it's going to be some other high-flying, fast person. But, he's been doing... I'd actually prefer him to have someone meaty, like a big guy. I know a few people have been saying, because he's been sitting at number 5 for a couple of weeks now, Will Hobbs. I wouldn't mind seeing that, Miro versus Will Hobbs in a, meat versus meat fight, giving something a little bit different to do. That would be pretty cool. So, yeah, for me, I hope he gets a match at All Out. But coming up, whoever beats him is just going to be $1 million, because he's doing just such great work at the moment.
Yeah. Sergi, you are our resident stylistic expert, and we talked about this obviously at length last week, talking about Miro and Lee Johnson, and you and I are very much on the same page about where Miro's at as a wrestler and what Lee Johnson was able to do and why that match really worked. But Anthony brought up the question, so now I gotta ask you this. We've now seen 2 weeks in a row that Miro has faced an opponent of a similar style. What do you think that this is the style? This is the kind of guy. It's got to be a Lee Johnson. It's got to be a Fuego. It's got to be someone like that. Is that the kind of style that is going to beat Miro, or is this a little bit of a red herring in the long-term storyline of Miro as TNT champion?
I think that I definitely would say that I'd be surprised if it turned out to be a red herring. I think they're planting the seeds for where his downfall will come. And I agree with Anthony. I don't know who that will be. It certainly could be Sammy. There's lots of people that it could be. It remains to be seen. But I think it's interesting. I mean, when he went for the pin, didn't bite on that. But I absolutely, because there was something at stake besides the title, and the title wouldn't change hands on a count out, I bid on the count out. I thought it was a genuine possibility. And the other thing is that the first DDT before the bell was definitely a case of one of those phantom falls of who knows. It genuinely makes you feel like if the ref had been willing to ring the bell at that point, it could have been the end of it. But of course, the ref is like, "What are you talking about? Both guys have to be on their feet and not tied up before I ring the bell. That's the rules. You've had a match before. You know how this works."
You know what that kind of reminded me of a little bit when I saw that. I was thinking, this reminds me of Brian Cage versus Hangman. Because that was a match that we went into figuring that Hangman would win to solidify his rise towards being number one. And Cage attacked him before the bell, and that was the reason Hangman lost. So I watched that, and I was like, if you were to do Fuego winning, you attack Miro before the bell. I mean, you do something like that, and that's part of what sold the countout, I think. Which is also, I agree with you, something that I really bid on. I was like, yep, that's how they're going to do this. Let's talk. There's so much stuff to talk about when it comes to AEW between 2 hours of Dynamite, an hour of Rampage, and we still got a ton of stuff to talk about with, of course, Britt Baker. So in order to condense a lot of this stuff, we are going to institute something new here. We're going to start the quick hits. Just like 10 punches in the corner, they are quick, they are dirty, and only half the time are they going to be really effective. But hopefully this is one of those times. So we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we don't have a ton to say about, but that need mentioning given long-term storylines and given the fact that, look, if AEW puts stuff on TV, then it's at least somewhat important. So let's start off here with Best Friends versus the Hardy Family Office. This was a trios match that went down on Dynamite. Not a ton here in terms of story, in terms of the match. I thought it was interesting because the Hardy Family Office got 68% of the match offense. They outdid Best Friends 20-17 in terms of big offense. Wheeler Yuta ends up eating the pin, which I thought was interesting as well. I'm not sure where this story is going. What I am sure about is that Orange Cassidy is still a big star. People still love him. He's still over. And people are not quite sold on the Hardy Family Office, but people are sold on Private Party. So yes on Orange Cassidy, no on Matt Hardy, yes on Private Party. That's what I learned from this match. So if you want to push Private Party potentially as a tag team going forward, I think you can do that. I think people are into that, and I think they bring something else to the table. They have that athleticism that Top Flight possesses, but it's a little different. It's more flashy than Private Party, or than Top Flight rather, and they have those moves. They have the silly string. I love the gin and juice. It's one of my favorite tag finishers right now. So that's what I learned from this match. I think you could do it, but this story, Best Friends and HFO, not quite sure where this is going, or really if it's going anywhere. It might not be. Andrade versus Pac was announced, presumably for All Out. I don't know if we have had like a total confirmation, but I think it's going to happen at All Out. Anthony, what do you expect to see from this match, and possibly the fact that Andrade could be going in as AAA Mega Champion by that point?
So first of all, in regards to Hardys, I imagine they'll have Hardy versus Cassidy at All Out. That's what they normally do. They'll have the bits of the two teams fight each other, and then the final one-on-one versus Hardy. Obviously, Cassidy will win. Like I said last week, I don't know what's going on with the Hardy Family Office. I'm kind of a bit done with them just moving from feud to feud and losing the feuds despite outnumbering everyone at this point. They are the biggest faction by none, even outnumbering Dark Order. So yeah, look, something needs to change after All Out. Hardy's obviously with Hardy, he's got another kid coming along the way now, so congratulations on them, obviously. But that might mean he might need to take some time away. Who knows what will happen? We'll have to see. Yeah, look, it's just one of those things of it's just going to be play by numbers with Cassidy eventually beating Hardy. Whether that happened at All Out or on an episode of Rampage, who knows? But that's where we're going with that one. The Miro Pack, not Miro Pack. Although let's get that on board. Pac Andrade. It's going to be very interesting because this weekend we're going to find out just how much Andrade has in him. We've seen him wrestle once on Dynamite and a handful of times outside. He hasn't looked very impressive. Obviously, he's been focusing a lot on putting muscles on and, beefing up and all that. So I wonder if that's affected his wrestling style. This week, he's obviously got the match against Omega. It will tell where he is, in ring after that. So I don't know whether or not what sort of match we're going to be having. However, I would love for the match to be for the AAA title at All Out between him and Pac. That would be interesting.
That would be.
And I'm imagining Andrade's going to win that. Andrade will win that. And yeah, then I'm wonder what will happen with Death Triangle, whether or not they're going to stay together or not, or whether or not something else is going to happen. But, that would be a pretty interesting sort of way to go. I don't think that they will do it for the title because they don't really mention the AAA too much. It's one of those things, like you mentioned before, we were going to have Omega lose that title, but to be honest, they hardly ever mention it. So it's not a really big. It's not a really big one, but yeah. Look,
that's fair.
Let's see what happens. I'll be more excited after I watch him versus Kenny. In a few hours, I'm waiting for that one. Haven't decided if I'm going to try and sleep before that yet, but we'll get there. But yeah, look, it'll be very interesting. Pac's obviously an amazing wrestler. He's pretty much one of the only people that you can speak on the same breath as Kenny in regards to how good he really is. So if Kenny can get Andrade to a good match, Pac can as well. We'll just see. We'll see where he is. Really, that's really what we need. Like I said the other week, I need to see Andrade start wrestling. He needs to get in the ring. He's been doing, and also he just needs to let the manager talk for him. I feel he's trying to talk over him a bit too much. He's got the manager there for a reason. Let him do the talking. Yes, he can talk a little bit, but I feel he's trying to fight too much of it. So
I think
there's been.
I was going to say, I think as far as
thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one more thing, and then you can go. There's been a lot of speculation that AEW, unfortunately, are going to bring in Ric Flair. I imagine because Andrade has spoken about wanting his entire family at AEW. Charlotte Flair to AEW confirmed. But I personally don't want Flair there. I don't want to see him. But I imagine if he's going to go, he will be wrapped up with the Andrade storyline, which I don't want to see. But that's, if he does go, I'm assuming that's what we're going to get. And I have no interest in that at all. So we'll see. It's a play by ear.
Yeah, well, we can talk, as we get closer to the potential of that happening. I'm sure we will talk about Ric Flair's potential role if that is going to happen, or if it's just going to be sort of a figurehead thing. The only thing that I'll add is, as far as titles go, the AAA Mega Championship, it may be the least talked about of Kenny's collection right now, but AEW has been known to feature it on TV from time to time. I mean, Kenny defended it against Sammy Guevara a little while ago, so you never know. Stranger things have happened. If Andrade were to win that, possibly, maybe it is on the cards for him to defend it against Pac. Not that they need a bigger match for that to be entertaining, but it's just a potential possibility. Sergi, we saw Chris Statlander versus Nyla Rose. This was, in my opinion, a very surprising match with a very surprising conclusion, especially given the fact that Nyla had actually attacked Chris Statlander earlier in the night. So take us through this match and where Nyla and Chris are going to go from here.
Yeah, I agree that the match was in many ways surprising. I'm not surprised that Chris Statlander won. Nyla is, has been falling. She had an unsuccessful challenge for the world title, so I mean, it's not surprising that she's in jobbing mode now. Not necessarily, but I mean, in this case, a little bit, because they just didn't give it much time, considering that. I mean, you have 3 minutes, it's going to feel a little bit like a squash. Even though it didn't really feel like a squash, it felt more even than it turned out it was. And that's not necessarily good. If you're going to be giving someone a squash, they should get all the benefit of it. And I don't feel that Statlander did necessarily. And, a big part of that is that they didn't have much time to work with. But that's not all of it, unfortunately. If you look at my Styles Make Fights preview of this match, what I said was these two have fought before, and when they fought before, they had a very atypical match. Their grapple stats went to nothing. They completely abandoned the core of their game. Grapple moves, throws, and suplexes, throws, and all of that are like the heart of Nyla and Chris as both being the biggest in their division, along with Jade. That's the heart of their offense, and against each other they didn't use it, which just made it feel like these are two people who throw people around because they are bigger than them, not because it's something they're good at. And that's not the impression you want of your giants. You want your giants to be someone who will throw anybody around, even someone bigger than themselves. And that's not what they're giving us. They didn't have much time to work with, and I get that. But it's just a case of, like, we need to see these women and Jade fighting someone their own size, fighting people bigger than themselves, and showing that they can use their offense that we see from them against smaller women. You're going to see that same offense regardless of who they're fighting. And it's just a matter of what do they need to do to feel more comfortable doing that. I mean, do they feel they don't have the power? Or do they need to spend more time with the weight at the weight bench? But it's not a shoot. It should be all about trust and cooperation and skill. Anybody should be able to throw anybody, because it's not a shoot. They're working together. So you need to get that trust there, or whatever that you need to do, because when we're seeing a match with so little grapples from competitors who that's a heart of what they do, it just feels like it makes the character seem more like a bully than they're supposed to be. Chris Statlander is a big competitor, but a beloved babyface. Yeah. She should be throwing Nyla around. We need to see that from her. So that was a disappointing match in many ways, partly because they were given so little time, but partly because of the offense that we were seeing from them. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that match. There was another thing that we were going to move into, but you would introduce it first.
No, it's a very interesting take on that match that I hadn't thought about until you just said it. But we will go right back to you, because one of the other segments that we saw that didn't get a whole lot of fanfare, but actually did generate a pretty good crowd reaction, was everything involving the factory. Tony Schiavone came out, interviewed QT Marshall. QT said, I'm not going to apologize. Tony said, I'm not going to apologize. This whole weird thing. I don't even remember what they're supposedly apologizing for, but that's what they're talking about. And then QT brought in Tony Schiavone's son, started beating him up, and then Paul White came out to confront them, and he did the whole thing, came over the top rope. The commentators sold it. They're like, oh, look at this guy, which I thought was pretty cool, because like everyone knows that's what he does, but I thought that was cool. And then he choke slams Aaron Solo. Tony Schiavone and his son get away, and away we go. So, Sergi, this segment felt like it was there. Now, you know that I have a bias when it comes to the factory. Anything that's even remotely tangential to Anthony Ogogo, I am 2 thumbs up. I'm for that. So, what did you think about this one?
Well, you make a really good point. This was the kind of segment that plays really well for the live audience. It is a pro wrestling evergreen. And that's why as soon as Marshall started hinting at this segment, that I called how it was going to go. I'll take the credit for that.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. And you know, when I said that I expected to see it, I did not say that I expected to enjoy it, just that I felt that it was inevitable. And, you know, it's definitely a segment that, if not for the fact that Paul White is a really big name, and the thing that, you know, his big comeback and farewell tour and whatever it is he's doing right now is considered a big thing. This could be maybe more of a dark thing if it weren't for that. But that is an aspect of it. So, you know, it's going to take up a little bit of time on Dynamite. It's not thrilling to me as a fan at home, but I can certainly see how it pops the crowd, and that's kind of what it does.
That makes sense to me. And then the final thing that I want to talk about to. Yep.
I'll take this one.
I apologize. It's not. Sorry, I wasn't quite done. Just wanted to say about the Paul White thing. I apologize. I got distracted by something here. Paul White. The other thing about it was you were like, I don't even remember how this started. The beginning of it was Marshall pouring his drink over Tony Schiavone in a backstage interview. And he said that he was going to apologize for that. And of course, being a heel, we knew it was going to be a insincere apology, leading probably to a beatdown or something. And the classic evergreen pro wrestling trope that I'm referring to that made me say that this is where this is going is the classic going back to Roddy Piper when he was color commentator back in Georgia, coming to the defense of when a heel attacked the play-by-play guy. Is you got a commentator at the commentating desk who is a non-wrestler and one who is an ex-wrestler, and you have someone screwing with the one and the other comes to his defense. Just such a classic evergreen pro wrestling trope, and that's why I expected to see it. It certainly isn't what everybody would necessarily want to spend Dynamite time on, but we've got Paul White here, and we kind of have to give him his spot. It will lead to what it leads to and eventually come to an end, and presumably we're looking at Paul White getting a few wins over some of the lesser members of the factory, and then going out on his back against a Camarado or a Go-Go, and that should be worthwhile at the very least, if not necessarily great viewing. You know, at least someone gets something out of it. Whoever wins and retires him.
When Paul White joined, I wasn't exactly
retires him.
Yeah, well, when Paul White joined, I wasn't exactly expecting to see a match from him, but I don't know. I got an open mind. When it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, he said from the start, like, I'm here mainly to commentate, but I've got one more run in me. He's going to fight some members of the factory, and maybe they'll try to arrange that Shaq match that he's always wanted as well.
That would be something. It's got to be a tag match if they do that. Just as long as a Go-Go beats him, that's what I want to see.
I would not be surprised a bit if that's the end of it. Is a Go-Go using that punch and taking him out, for good with the punch.
I would like to see that personally. Let's wrap up here. Talk about the Good Brothers versus the Dark Order. The Impact Tag titles were on the line. We've already talked about one Impact title changing, but that was on Rampage. On Dynamite, we don't do Impact title changes, at least right now. So this match, look, I wanted to talk about this one myself because I am a big fan of the Good Brothers. I might be the biggest Good Brothers fan of all of the contributors to Pro Wrestling Musings. So obviously I'm going to like this more than most of the other people that would talk about this. But what I really
because
like
they're
about
terrible.
I know, man. I love the Good Brothers. I think there are things that the Good Brothers do that are incredibly high level things that some people don't really notice. So I'll give you an example. The Dark Order does the spot where Stu Grayson he puts the guy into the corner seated, then he hits the guy who falls back onto Evil Uno's legs, who then propels him back up, and Stu Grayson does the belly to belly into the guy in the corner. It's a great spot, always a lot of fun. When the Good Brothers do it, Carl Anderson, even though he's not big, he does the kind of wobbly sell where he's like, gradually leaning back, and you can hear the fans get into it. Stu Grayson's yelling at him, doing all that. Like, I get it if it doesn't work for you. I get it if you think the Good Brothers are too wacky and they're too silly and they don't. I get that. But for me, they toe the line. That spot I loved because it's that little thing. It just gives you that little bit of anticipation that you don't normally get with that spot. It happens so fast that you're into it, but this one, you get a chance to breathe, and you're like, oh, he's going to do it. He's going to belly-to-belly him into the corner. And then they do the cannonball 450 combination. And they do, it just gives you that second to think about what's coming. And in my opinion, it's a very high-level ring psychology that the Good Brothers possess that very few teams these days really do possess. And that's why I really like them. I think they do have that. So to get into the stats, this is, again, you talk about ring psychology. These guys didn't go in saying, okay, we're going to get 2/3 of the match offense, but you're going to get the big offense. I mean, maybe they did. If you did, let us know because we can help you out with that. But that's exactly what happened. The Good Brothers got 68% of the offense, but the Dark Order they led in big offense, 16-10. The Good Brothers are heels, but the Dark Order had the spots that you remember. And that's what the Good Brothers were there to do. They were there to give you a match that you'll remember, that you enjoyed, that popped the crowd, because the Dark Order are massive baby faces. And that's exactly what they did, and they excelled. They hit they cheat, they hit the Magic Killer, and they're done. And I first of all, Magic Killer is a great move. Carl Anderson's gun stunt is a great move. Doc Gallows hitting people is great. Like, it's just I really like the Good Brothers. So that's what I had to say about this match. I liked this match. I enjoyed it. And I would like to, personally, I would like to see the Good Brothers on AEW more. I understand if not everyone does, but I definitely do. That is it for Quick Hits. Any parting comments about anything from either of you? We'll start with Anthony.
Some person decided to put on Twitter on I think it was Gallows' Twitter saying that they should change the Magic Killer because it's a shit finisher, and his response was, if it's so shit, why has it won championships all around the world? Unlike how many championships you've won with your finisher? Oh wait, 0. And that's quite funny.
I'm down with that. Sergi, any parting thoughts on any of the topics?
Yes, during Quick Hits, we talked a little bit about Orange Cassidy, and I just, when you were talking about that, I was like, oh yeah, this is Quick Hits, so each of us, we only cover one topic, we don't go all the way around. Orange Cassidy, I don't know how many people noticed, but he was just standing in the background during Christian Celebration. Didn't get involved, he was just there.
It, yeah.
It's weird. It was just a weird little aspect of that. Like, is this hinting at something, or was it just an Easter egg that's meaningless? I guess we'll find out.
I wouldn't put it past him for it to me. So you remember that's how his whole feud with Jericho started. Is he walked through on an interview with the Inner Circle, and then we got Mimosa Mayhem. So I'm not saying we're gonna get
exactly.
Mimosa Mayhem with Christian, but although that would be interesting. The Impact title defended in a Mimosa Mayhem match. That would be a title that grew out of the NWA World's Championship, defended in a Mimosa Mayhem match.
Now that you mention it, oddly, they were celebrating with a little bit of the bubbly. I mean,
okay, so look, so you predicted that Paul White would punch out or would chokeslam Aaron Solo with that whole story. Jacob predicted that Juventud Guerrero would return to wrestling and fight on AEW. I am predicting that Christian will defend the Impact World title in a Mimosa Mayhem match. So that's if it happens.
Darko's predictions are the best because no one calls you on them if they're wrong.
Exactly.
It's only if they happen to be right that it's like, oh, by the way, I said that was going to happen.
Exactly. So hold me to that, or I'm going to hold myself to that. I'm going to let everyone know if that's right. Let's end today talking about Britt Baker. Dynamite
Star
and
of the week.
Rampage, yes, she was. Both took place in Britsburg. She came out, did a promo on Dynamite. The first thing that stood out to me, and we'll get into all the things that were great about Britt Baker, but what stood out to me was the terrible towels. So I don't know if I'm sure Anthony didn't get this reference, but the terrible towels are mainstays at Pittsburgh Steelers games. Fans wave them, and when if you look at the stadium, it's 60,000 people waving the terrible towels. It's been a tradition for a long, long time in Pittsburgh, going back to the era of the Steel Curtain defense, and so it's been around a long time. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the most successful in terms of Super Bowls, the second winningest football team in the history of the NFL. And the terrible towel is it's such a Pittsburgh thing. That's people from music videos to other sports, they wave the terrible towel. So the fact that they did that for Britt Baker, to me, it was like it was special because in wrestling, you don't always see people buy into the pop culture references. Wrestlers try to do it. They try to bring in athletes. They try to do stuff like that. Not a lot of times people don't buy into that. But the fans bought into it. They brought the terrible towels, and they waved them when she came out, and they waved them during the match, and they waved them when she won. And it's like, it was cool to see this mainstream thing that you usually see 60,000 people doing at Heinz Field. Now you see it in wrestling, and you see it for a heel of all things. I really enjoyed that part of it. Britt Baker, I cannot say enough how much I respect her for changing her character, for getting over, and for riding with it, and just knowing what to say. She went from the failure of the women's division, that she was anointed the next great babyface, and she fell flat, and everyone was like, Britt Baker is a complete failure, AEW messed her up, and all this stuff, to now she is the most, in my opinion, by far the most dependable promo on the women's side, and one of the most dependable promos in the company. I mean, she never cuts a bad promo anymore, especially when it comes to Pittsburgh. I loved her promo on Dynamite. I loved the match with Red Velvet. She is great. Britt Baker is great. And if AEW is going to lean into, and we'll get into this in a second because I want to talk about this as well, but if AEW is going to lean into the fact that Britt Baker is over, she's going to get cheered even as a heel, if you want to just roll with that and say, you know what, Britt Baker's the biggest star we have, so she's going to be our champion, and you do with that what you want. You boo who you want, you cheer who you want, but Britt Baker's going to be our champion. This Rampage match to me proved that can work, and we'll get into that. But Sergi, what did you think about the star of the week in her hometown? What did you think about Britt Baker?
Well, I think you make a really interesting point because they have options. There are ways they can go. They can turn her babyface. They can literally turn her babyface and have her, say, because of the support I've gotten from the fans, I've decided to change my ways because you've just proven to me blah, 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 and just turn boring. And of course I don't think they will do that because that would backfire greatly.
Yes.
And I know that you're on the same page with me on that.
Yeah.
They can do what you said. And
say it with me. The heel tendencies of Baker, that is the feature, not the bug. You hear me say it every week. Yeah. So don't turn her face. You do
say that every week, and I agree. Another option is what you were saying, is that they can just completely lean into the fact that Britt Baker is just as awful as she's ever been, but for some reason, the fans love her. Just shrug your shoulders and say, who knows why fans do what they do. We, as the babyface announcers, aren't going to pretend we think that she's great. We're going to continue to call her out on the things that she does wrong. We're going to say, say, hey, fans are crazy. They're cheering her for this, but it's still terrible behavior and against the rules and against sportsmanship and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And if you lean into that a lot and just be like, you know what, the fans are giving this babyface hell, but she doesn't deserve it, you know, and just really emphasize that with the commentary. You can make it work. Another possibility that I think is an interesting one, considering the situation right now, is that they can have her come out and cut a really local heel promo, your sports team sucks, Steelers rule, once they've left Pittsburgh, and try to play it as her babyface thing was a hometown thing. Of course, we know that it started before that, but it was much bigger in Pittsburgh, of course. And if they would like to go back to her as a heel, they can have her come out and really rip into hometown, wherever her next hometown is. They're going to Chicago next. I don't know if she probably doesn't have a match, though. Where's Dynamite next week?
I thought it was in
Anybody
Chicago.
know off the top of their head?
I thought it was in Chicago.
Oh, is Dynamite in Chicago too, as well as Rampage? Yeah.
No, I take that back. It's in
just
Houston. It's in Houston. I'm sorry.
Okay. So they're going to Houston and then going to Chicago 2 nights later. But yeah, regardless of where she gets her next moment, whether that be on Wednesday or on Friday, just go after the local sports teams. Steelers rule, you know, Longhorns drool, you know, and just antagonize the local crowd and try to play off that her babyface pops were always a hometown hero thing, and that you know, Pittsburgh is her Canada, to make a Bret Hart comparison. So there's a lot of options that they have.
That's a really interesting perspective. I actually hadn't thought about that before, but I would like to see that happen. I mean, she came out, again, this is something that maybe you wouldn't have noticed, and certainly someone like Anthony wouldn't have noticed because you don't watch American sports, I presume. But the fact that she came out dressed in the black and gold, you know, that's Steelers, Penguins, University of Pittsburgh, you know, that black and gold aesthetic is that's part and parcel of Pittsburgh sports. So I would be down for that. I would be down if they just said she's a babyface in Pittsburgh, people love her, and she goes in on that. She, you know, I love Pittsburgh. This is better than that. It kind of reminds me. It's like it's a different version. You know how Kenny has the weird thing with North Carolina, where Justin Roberts will connect Kenny to North Carolina somehow. That's kind of Britt's. That would be her gimmick. Is that like everything she does, she connects it to Pittsburgh. This isn't better than Pittsburgh. Talk about the food, the sports, you know, whatever. I would enjoy that. I think that's something that she could really lean into and would feel really organic. You know, not like when Cody and Ogogo, their feud morphed instantaneously to, you know, U.S. versus England, where it was a good idea but felt completely out, you know, just out of nowhere and didn't work. This would feel totally organic to Britt Baker's character. Anthony, you are a resident story guy, so before we get into specifically talking about Britt's match with Thunder Rosa with Red Velvet, maybe we'll get there.
Dreaming.
Maybe we'll get there. But before we get into that, I just want you to comment broadly on Britt Baker's character and where you think she might be able to go from here.
So first of all, I did know about the sports history stuff.
Oh, okay. I didn't give you enough credit.
I did know about the color stuff, and also I did know about the towel stuff. Not only did I know that, but I also know that the first couple rows got them free of charge, and everyone else had to buy them at the arena. And I also know that on the back of them has a DMD written on them.
Wow, so that's a specialty terrible towel. I like that.
So there you go. So
I didn't bring those home. Those were AEW terrible towels.
Yeah,
I apologize for not giving you enough credit. I'm sorry for that.
So I actually knew more about it than you. To be honest, the only reason I knew more was that I have several friends who actually went and live in the area, and they were able to. They commented on Twitter about these specific things. So yeah, like, you know, it was. I have inside sources on this one. Anyway, in terms of the match was good. I did say, like, a lot of people were like, I don't know why Red Velvet's here. They obviously wanted someone to have a good match with her. Red Velvet has improved so much, and you could see it when you compare this match to their first match. It's night and day. Like, how good has she gotten? And she started off not working as heelish, but then, towards the end of it, started working that injury. She fed into that, and I knew that was going to happen. And for her to do that one night and, attack that, not only does it make sense to attack the injury, but, it played into she was going to get booed no matter what. I know a lot of people like, oh, yeah, let's just put Nyla here, But then when we look at that Nyla versus Britt match, it's, do you really want Britt, I preferred this match much, much more than the Nyla match. Obviously, it looks like we're getting Statlander versus Britt at All Out, which, I thought it was going to be Thunder Rosa, but if Thunder Rosa and her are going to be the sort of Kenny and Hangman of the women's division and do something long term, that could be fun. Just extending that a little bit. It is the feud that the division can be built around. Obviously, Statlander's been doing a lot of good stuff. She's over as well.
Yeah.
In terms of how to make her heel. There's one change I would make, okay? And it's a very easy change. Instead of the beatdown and what we got tonight, have that happen on Dynamite. So the way that I'd do this, and it's very simple, is I'd give them a little bit of extra time in the match and have it going off with Britt in celebration, Just end it with Britt celebrating, There's no harm in that. She didn't need to try and get heel heat in front of a crowd that is gonna just cheer her no matter. She could have went and beat up anyone. It doesn't matter who, and she would have gotten cheered. Okay, so there's no point in doing it. Instead, next week, have her doing some promo, and then have Red Velvet come out and go, I pushed you to the limit. I want you to acknowledge that. I pushed you to your limit. She then beats her up. We then get the Jamie Hayter backup thing come up after, Statlander will come down and rescue her. Then Jamie Hayter will come in. You could do all that on Dynamite next week, and it wouldn't have been in front of that crowd. It would have been able to, okay, cool, let's get her heat back. Just waiting a little bit longer for that. It would have been probably a bit better. At the moment, no match for next week for females have been announced, so we'll have to wait and see what they sort of put together. But yeah, look, that I think that probably would have worked a little bit better than trying to do the let's get her heated back up in that territory, because it's not going to happen. And yeah, whenever she goes to Pittsburgh, that's where it should she'll be doing this all the time. Now, one counter thing to my previous thing, if they do it next week, they wouldn't have been able to connect Jamie Hayter as perfectly as they did with Britt, where during Jamie Hayter's only singles match, it was actually the last time we saw her on AEW was actually during the last Pittsburgh match against Britt Baker.
I didn't know that. But that's
pretty
cool.
So there's that little thread there where they have fought before in Pittsburgh, and it was the last time Jamie Hayter was on AEW television before she went away, back to the UK, and now she's reappearing. That's the only thing that they, it makes perfect sense on a storyline of, oh, cool, this little moment, this all ties together, in a weird way, but at the same time, I just felt that if we pushed it 1 week back for that heat segment, we could have done it during a celebration, during a promo next week, and I think it would have been a much more effective thing. And just let her be a face at Pittsburgh. You're not going to change people's minds on that one.
Yeah, you know what? That's definitely fair enough. One thing I do want to say, I don't know what Jamie Hayter's future is going to be. We've seen this a couple times where it's been like a start and stop kind of return, like we saw it with Yuka Sakazaki, where it was kind of it was implied that she was back and then she just went to Japan like a week later. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with Jamie Hayter. But what I will say is Hayter has gone through the Chris Statlander transformation, where she was built as being, almost like a monster, and she was a heel. She was very strong, very hard to beat, and Statlander was the same way. Well, now both of them left for an extended period of time. They come back, they lost weight, they look more intimidating, they look more athletic, and for Chris Statlander, it really worked, and I think for Jamie Hayter, it has worked as well. So if she is going to stay, I'm excited to see what she can do, because I liked her work when she was in AEW the first time. So for her to come back looking different, and JR put it over and talking about, wow, look at Hayter, look how much better she looks, all this kind of stuff. I'm excited to see what she can do. I like Jamie Hayter as a talent.
Two very quick things. She got an All Elite graphic tonight as well.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yep,
right.
She got that. So for me, that means she's staying around. They do not just give those out.
As we found out on the show as well, Fuego's had like 50 some odd matches.
Yeah, so she got hers very quickly tonight. So, and the last time they did that was with Jade. Jade got hers very exactly. So I think that she's going to stay around for quite a while. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
And I forget the last. What else did you say? I honestly forget.
I was just talking about Hayter. I will get into something else.
That's what I was going to say. On Twitter, a bunch of people thought it was Becky Lynch. WWE Becky Lynch. Like, no, not even. Like, I didn't see that personally. But when people pointed it out, I was like, for a moment there, it does kind of a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
I guess.
I didn't think it was Becky Lynch, because that's such an unlikely grab for them. But I didn't know who it was at first, and Becky Lynch was the first name that came to my mind. And like, no way. But wow, who is it though? That definitely with the red hair, I was just like, there's no way that's Becky Lynch. But boy, is that Becky Lynch? I mean, wouldn't that have been an amazing moment? That has got to be the biggest the biggest name that they could possibly get, now that they already have Punk and Danielson.
Yeah, one week before, hey, you're doing my boy Brock Lesnar dirty. That's who it'll be. But I'll tell you what, when Brock Lesnar debuts, when Brock Lesnar debuts, everyone's gonna know that it's. Look, the guy, the MMA guy said he's bringing backup, so it's obviously Brock Lesnar. That's all I'm saying.
You don't even believe that.
No, I don't. I certainly do not. So I want to talk about Britt, where she might be going, because this is something that we've talked about for several weeks now on the podcast, and even longer than that. And maybe this is something that I'll do a dedicated video about over on the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. So subscribe over there if I do, so you can see it. We've talked about for a long time about how Britt works as a champion, or whether she works as a champion. How difficult it is to book someone who is a heel, but who is being cheered like a babyface. And this match absolutely set in stone the fact that Britt is not being cheered ironically. We've seen fans do this, like with Triple H. They cheer him ironically. The Rock, they used to do this. No, Britt is a babyface. I mean, they literally, I said this 2 weeks ago, and I said it as a hyperbole, and then it actually happened. They did a yay boo spot where Britt was being cheered, and that to me that's babyface stuff. And so this is not the case of, how do we make Britt Baker look so heelish that people stop? I don't think you can. I mean, I think Anthony brought this up. She could have curb stomped a puppy onto the belt and people would have cheered her in Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any way that you can get people to boo her like a heel. And Red Velvet, I thought that people were just going to be kind of apathetic to it. She would come out and people would, there'd be like a smattering of cheers and people would be like, oh yeah, it's Red Velvet. And then, no. She was being booed like she was the heel. However, I don't know if this was the call, or if I don't know if AEW booked this, or if Britt Baker and Red Velvet called this in the ring. Either way, something happened in this match that to me completely changed my whole thought process about what to do with Britt Baker. What happened was Britt started selling her wrist like she was a babyface, and Red Velvet started attacking it like she was a heel. Now, the reason this works is because Red Velvet was built as intense. She was a fiery babyface. She always has been. And Britt Baker antagonized her. And then Red Velvet just goes off. And then she starts targeting that wrist. And it starts slow at first. Remember, the first spot was her. She had the wrist down and she was going to stomp on it. And she didn't, right? That was the first spot. By the end, she took the brace off and started applying a submission. That, to me, is exactly what Britt Baker's title reign needs to be. Like, to a T, this is how you do it. What you need to have is it doesn't necessarily have to be a babyface, but it has to be someone who is willing to step in there and treat Britt Baker as if Baker is the babyface. And from a statistical perspective, I'll show you what I mean. Red Velvet gets 52% of the match offense. She leads big offense 10-8. Strikes, Britt Baker outdoes Red Velvet, but in terms of strike downs, Red Velvet has the lead there. This looks exactly like what a babyface heel matchup looks like in AEW. I mean, it's like a carbon copy of most babyface heel matchups that we see. So it worked because Baker sells like she's a babyface and fans buy into it like she's a babyface. So all you have to do is get someone to attack her in a believable fashion. So when Statlander attacked after the match, I was a little surprised because Statlander is over, right? She's one of the only women whose overness would approach Britt Baker. She's not quite there yet, but the fans are really into it. So I was surprised that it might be Statlander versus Baker. However, you could do something like this where Statlander, Baker just antagonizes Statlander over and over and over again. And then Statlander, goes after the wrist, or she goes after the leg, or whatever the case may be, that Statlander heals it up in the match. The reason it works is because around Britt Baker, there's like this, it's like through the looking glass, they've gone down the rabbit hole, and whatever happens there, it doesn't count. So Chris Statlander, like Red Velvet, if she fights Jamie Hayter next week, she will be the babyface, and people will cheer her as if this never happened, booing her against Britt Baker. Chris Statlander would be the same thing. She would get booed against Britt Baker, but the next week she'd get cheered as a babyface. So whatever happens with Britt Baker, it doesn't count for your overarching character. That's what I learned in this match, is that there actually is a way to have Britt Baker be a champion for a long time, give her meaningful feuds, give her meaningful matches. You can do it. Nyla Rose was the experiment gone wrong, right? That it doesn't work to do it in that way. Maybe it would work to do it with someone else, because Nyla, I think just in general, fans are kind of done with Nyla for the time being. But for right now, do what Red Velvet did. That's how you book Britt Baker. And that's what I learned from this match. More than anything else. Yes, Baker's over, but more importantly, yes, there is a way for Britt Baker to be effective as a champion. And that was it was for the main event of the first ever Rampage. It was pretty heartening to see that there is hope for Britt Baker as a champion. It's not just throwing time in a hole to try to make Britt Baker work. No, there's a real way to do this, and that was very encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Griff. It was really eye-opening for sure. But I think that you don't want to look at it in too black and white of terms. Yes, she is treated as a babyface by the fans in some ways. That doesn't mean that that Chris Statlander is attacking her. No, she's coming to the defense of a babyface who is being attacked post-match.
Okay, that's fair.
Even though the fans aren't treating it that way, doesn't mean that the characters shouldn't suddenly lose their memory of how everyone has acted just because the fans are reacting in a strange way. And if they run it that way, and presuming that they don't go with the suggestion I had of trying to get her over as a heel again and treating Britsburg as an anomaly, which was a possibility. But if they go the way that you're talking about of just going with she is a villain that the fans happen to love, they can make it work. Just remember that she is a villain and that the good guys should treat her as one. But they understand that the fans don't, and just like, well, fans are crazy sometimes. No, it's just what it is.
Exactly. I'm reminded of the meme with Patrick Starr where he says the inner workings of my mind are an enigma, and that you just treat the fans like that. Like, look, they're gonna cheer, and there's nothing you can do about it. They're just gonna do it, and those fans will be crazy,
But I want to talk a little bit about her opponent as well. She did a fantastic job, like you guys said. It was an amazing match, and it was a very atypical match, which is a victory in and of itself, because last time I said anything about her. About Red Velvet, it was that I couldn't figure out what typical was for her. She had not settled on any mix of offense, anything in particular that I could say, okay, this is what a regular match for her looks like. And that's not true anymore. I would say that she, if you look at my last Styles Make Fights, she has a definite, this is what she does when she's confident, and this is what she does when she's not confident. Yeah. And we did not see either of those matches here. It was not the kind of match where her offense is suppressed and she's focused on counters and is just trying to fight from underneath with counters. It's also not the kind of match where she's focused on her strikes, which is where her strength is. She didn't really use as much strikes, and I don't know if that's a combination of meeting meeting Britt where she was. Britt kind of controlling the offense or taking advantage of the opportunity presented by the broken wrist. But yeah, she was a lot more focused on submissions than normal. But
considering that Red Velvet, on average, she never uses submissions. I mean, in our stats database where we extrapolate, per hour, she averages 0 seconds of submissions per hour. So that tells me that, if you look at the absolute numbers for Red Velvet, this is someone who never, ever, ever, ever uses submission. She actually, so I take it back. She averages 0. It's because she has never done a submission in a match in which we track stats. And in this match, not only did she do them, but she outdid Britt Baker. If we were to extrapolate this out per hour, she would have 353 seconds of submission time per hour. That would be the most among women in AEW, and some of the most among anyone in AEW, men included. She completely changed who she was going into this match.
And that kind of brings up a point of, is it just the opportunity presented by the wrist, or a new direction that she's going to take? We'd have to wait till we see her next match. I'm really interested to see. It's fascinating in and of itself, and because Red Velvet's matches have become really watchable and entertaining. So I'm just really impressed by that. Britt Baker, on the flip side of that, put on a match that I think, some people were like, some people have been unimpressed by her lately, and I think that she's been good, but this is a whole new level. The use of the Oshigarashi, that was amazing. Yep. I just like, and I couldn't believe Excalibur didn't call it. I was like, Oshigarashi, and the classic, I can't pull off my finisher because of one hand not working. I will reverse it to the opposite side. Such a great ending spot. Yep. It was a great match and a well thought out match that really worked on all levels.
Yep, absolutely agree, Anthony.
And what a way to kick off your very first Rampage with the 3 matches we got. That is just. It's like they made a statement that no, this is not our B show. This is a different animal. This is something you've never seen before, which is we set everything up on Dynamite, and then Rampage is just fun.
Yeah.
Because we've already set it. We don't need to advance storylines, though they advanced a few. We can just pay off things and have a lot of fun. And that's what we got, and that's what I hope it looks like we're probably going to be expecting towards the future.
Well, AEW sort of has a rhythm to the way they book, where they will build things up for a week or two, and then they'll have them pay off. And they just they go in that rhythm. And this return to fans sort of threw that off because they had just so many matches. They had so many payoffs happening over and over and over again every week. I think Rampage will... going once they've stabilized post All Out, I think Rampage will just be either a payoff show or it'll be a build-up show. And either way, I think you're right. It doesn't have to be a B show. That was something I was very skeptical about. And we talked about this in the chat. We went back and forth, and I said there has to be a B show. There has to be. But there doesn't have to be. Rampage doesn't have to be a B show. I was totally wrong about that, and I'm glad I was. So hopefully this is something that we see moving forward. I thought this at the time, and I'll say it now. I don't remember watching a more entertaining hour of TV wrestling in a long time. I mean, this was, look, if you're gonna give me an hour of television wrestling, and this is what you give me, I couldn't be happier. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted to see from Rampage, and we'll get to how it might potentially get better in 1 second. But I want to give Anthony the last word on Britt Baker and where this story goes moving forward. If it is going to be Statlander at All Out, if they are going to wait to pull the trigger on Thunder Rosa, where do you think the story needs to progress as far as Britt Baker is concerned?
Yeah, as I said, it's clear that it's going to be Statlander versus Baker at All Out. It's pretty much was built up this week by that match, and I'm assuming that it will be continued to build up. As I said, we don't have a lot of time between now and when All Out is on. And yeah, I think it's just going to be that's what we're getting, and it's going to be a really good match. So I'm quite excited about it. It makes sense. She's come to the save. She has said on Dark and Elevation that well, she hasn't said herself, but commentary have been saying she could be in that title picture. She could make a claim for it. She's unbeaten since coming back. That's the real story here. She's unbeaten. So and she's got the record to prove it. So. One other interesting little thing from AAA that we're going to probably have is the Deanna will be a dual champion herself because she's fighting title for title against the AAA female women's champion. And I very much doubt Deanna is going to lose the Impact Championship considering the run she's on. And she's, fighting in NWA for the Impact Championship for their all women's pay-per-view. So I think she's definitely gonna win that one. Could be an interesting thing after All Out, potentially getting that match finally because I know they both want to do it. They've both been asking for it. It's time that we get some women through that forbidden door. It has been a complaint there. I'd love to see it. They also announced that in September Deanna's going to fight recently released Mercedes Martinez.
I saw that.
At a pay-per-view. I'm just like, whoa, hey, that came out of nowhere, but I'll have all of that, thank you.
Yep.
So, yeah, however we need to get that match, I'd love to see it. But yeah, look, she's gonna fight Statlander. She needed to fight, some big names now. Couple more, let's just keep building. It's not just about the championship, but having those stories outside of the championship, and we are starting to get those. Like we've got a feud between Swole and Diamante on Dark/Elevation at the moment, which is growing. So it's been good to see the real start. I think this is the real start of that women's division. We can just forget the Nyla stuff and everything that happened. It was what it was. I wasn't a fan of it, but let's really start to use everything we've got to build a great division here. Let's do this.
Yeah. I'm
looking at next week. So next week is a bit of a stacked card so we've got Dan Lambert coming in. You got Brian Cage and Ricky Starks doing a face-to-face. You got Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express for the AEW World titles. Sean Spears and Sammy Guevara going to announce something. I'm assuming it's going to be announced in a match for that episode of Rampage. We've
Correct.
got Darby
Correct.
Allin. Yes.
They are having a match on Wednesday, and Sammy Guevara has an announcement.
Yeah.
They're having a match, are they? I thought it was
Not just the announcement. They said that Sammy Guevara versus Sean Spears is happening, plus Sammy Guevara has an announcement to make.
Yeah.
It's kind of okay. I didn't hear that part. I thought that they were doing the announcement, but that's okay. Cool. All right, that's cool. But I was more keen for that. Now I'm wrong. I don't like being wrong. Cool. Anyway, then we've got Darby Allin and Sting versus 2.0. We didn't actually mention this, but Darby Allin versus Garcia, that was a phenomenal match. I absolutely loved it.
How did we miss talking about that?
We did
Such a
totally
great
skip
match.
that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't even...
That's fine.
But it was a great match.
Go watch that match. It's great.
Yes.
And then Chris Jericho versus MJF. I'm assuming that's going to be our main event. So if I was a betting person, we're going to start off with Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express because that's what they like to do.
Yep.
And Darby Allin and Sting as a tornado tag versus 2.0. It's going to be a fun time. Those guys are doing some absolute great stuff. Like they were just released from NXT, and now they're not only fighting Sting and Darby Allin, but they're also popping up on the post show. They're popping up on BTE.
Yep.
I think that they're staying. Same with Garcia. Now, one little thing for you. So Dante Martin is actually fighting against Lee Johnson. Is it not Lee Johnson? Sorry, who was it? Sorry, I'm trying to get the name. You go ahead, Sergio, if you need to say anything while I'm trying to look up the...
Yeah, you look that up. Hey, since we've got this pause, I'm going to say what I was going to say about Daniel Garcia's match. So Daniel Garcia, it was a really interesting match because if you look at it and compare it to his matches in the past, and there were only a couple of them, they're very short, it was like he was just dominated the offense of that match. It was very much, what we've seen of a dominant match where the heel nonetheless comes isn't able to come out with the win. The thing is, you compare their offense stats between before and after. It looks like the same guy, but like fleshed out and more complete. Yeah. He already had the submissions, but the technical side. But then he brought the strikes up and everything, and it's just this amazing completion of it. And then you have this match that is so notably like lopsided, and you've got Daniel Garcia completely controlling it, and Darby Allin still coming out in the end. And if you compare that match to Darby Allin's averages, there's hardly any difference.
Yep.
He brings a little more striking and a little less flying because you've got Daniel Garcia grounding him a little bit. But basically, you're looking at a typical Darby Allin match, which just tells you a lot that's his match. Is beat the hell out of me, but you can't beat me.
Yep. Well, we talk about Darby Allin being the underdog babyface, just being prototypical, exactly what you expect from that character archetype, and we saw more of that here. Danny Garcia, I think, is really good. I think he's got a future if AEW wants to keep him. I think he's only 22, they said. So that's a guy that's again one for the future where we talk about Darius and Dante Martin. We talk about Wheeler Yuta, and I think Danny Garcia probably belongs in that area if you want to use him. I think he does a lot of stuff really well. 137 seconds of submission, which is just insane. In a less than 10-minute match, you're talking about having almost 3 minutes of that being submission time for Danny Garcia. So it's easy to play off against if you're a babyface. When you're in submissions that much, it's easy to tell a really good story, and that's exactly what they did. One last thing. This is going to be a PWM first. No one's ever done this before, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to predict a specific spot that is going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know against who, but Darby Allin is going to do the springboard coffin drop where he just launches himself like a missile, and someone's going to catch him with a German suplex. I mean, I thought that when it happened, and Garcia ended up catching him in a rear naked choke, which was really cool, but some big guy is going to give him a snap German off of that, and it's going to look amazing. It's going to pop everyone in the world, and I will take credit for calling that spot before it happens. Anthony, if you want to give a thought on this match, please do. Otherwise, back to you for hopefully you found the opponent you were looking for.
I didn't know. I know it's an Impact guy, Lee Johnson or something like that. I honestly cannot remember, but like he's like a technical guy as well from Impact. I just on the spot. I had it there, but it's gone now because Twitter refreshes like that. But someone was mentioning that if they keep Garcia, get Daniel Bryan to have like a mini faction with like all these like technical guys like that, just run roughshod and submit and everyone. Like that would be a really cool faction that I'd be right in for.
That reminds me of NXT did that with Timothy Thatcher, where they had the Thatcher's Thatch Can stuff. Obviously, don't do it that way because that was kind of dumb. But the same idea.
He kept losing.
Well, yeah. Well, so the booking was ridiculous, but the idea, and it's a trope,
yes.
that heels will have this wrestling school kind of thing, and they'll just spend most of their time just beating the hell out of these jobbers. So I'd like to see Bryan Danielson do that, but then have his main crop of students that then also beat the hell out of jobbers. So, Danielson doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to prove himself. But guys like Danny Garcia and guys like that, they do have to. And so they'll just be in there just ripping the heads off of these, 20-year-old Nightmare Factory prospects. But I would like to see that because AEW has yet to do a trope like that. And I think it works. If you got a good heel and Bryan Danielson is a really good heel, it can definitely work.
I think that we are kind of dreaming if we think that Danielson can turn back the clock to be his heel self. I think the fans just love him way too much.
Yeah, well,
but it would be cool if they could pull it off.
It would be another Britt Baker situation that you just know. You know what? Look, fans are going to cheer him. Doesn't matter. And again, much like with Britt Baker, fans will cheer him because he's tearing the heads off of jobbers, not in spite of. So I'm not saying like there are other stories to do. I'm not saying if they don't do that it'll be bad. But because Anthony brought it up, it would be a good way to go and really serve to put over this the next generation of technical wrestlers who need more help getting over. Someone like Top Flight, like Darius and Dante Martin, you don't need anyone to tell me that they're going to get over. They just do it themselves. Technical wrestlers need a little bit of help to get up to that point. So Bryan Danielson could be the one that provides that.
Yeah, now, look, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, look, wherever they go with that, I just love more submission wrestling because that's my favorite type of wrestling.
Makes sense to me. We get into the fantasy booking. We are a week out from. I'm just gonna say it. All right, I'm just gonna say it. CM Punk is debuting on. Look, it's a huge. I know it's a huge scoop. Cassidy was texting me. He's like, look, no one knows this, so don't reveal it to anyone. But CM Punk is debuting in Chicago next week. So you've heard it here first. But
heard it here first.
Look, we are now T-minus 6 days from one of the biggest events in pro wrestling in a long time. Probably the biggest since AEW, since All In, I would think. It's probably the event, the biggest event since All In that will change the wrestling landscape. I think it's, it's one guy. So All In was the creation of an entire company, and now we have what we have with AEW. This is as much as one man could affect the wrestling landscape. When CM Punk debuts, it's hard to imagine that one person could have such a big impact, but I really think he will. So with that in mind, I mean, everyone and their mother is talking about how will CM Punk debut and what are they going to do, and we've talked a little bit about that. So because we are statistics based, because we analyze things, I want to, for our final thought here, think in the future, and let's think a little more critically, a little more analytically. What will CM Punk really mean to AEW? What can they do with this guy that will change what AEW is about? How will AEW use CM Punk to change the wrestling landscape that we all assume it's going to happen, but how exactly could it happen? So I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, but Anthony, for our final thought here, I know I turned into, who is that? Jerry Springer, I think, does the final thoughts. I just turned into Springer. But as we get out of here, Anthony, how do you think AEW can use CM Punk to change the wrestling landscape?
And you say I'm a heel. It's 2 a.m. here, and you're putting me on the spot, thinking that I can think critically. Heel move. The real heel finally shows his face.
Well, you know what? Okay. Red Velvet healed on Britt Baker, even though she's the baby face, so there's precedent.
All right, so in terms of CM Punk, okay, I think we've all been dreaming of this moment, like the fans of him and, what he represented and what we want to see. We were dreaming of this moment of him coming back to a ring for a very long time since he left. Yeah. And now the question of, he is the hottest unsigned talent. There's no question of it. And that's because everyone thought it's probably not going to happen. When he came back for the show, there was a lot put on it that, the backstage show, but it wasn't what people wanted. People want him in the ring. What will it mean for AEW? He has been basically trending every single day of the week since the hints really started. The fact that Tony's literally saying, on Busted Open Radio, not this exactly, but he's basically saying, what you're getting at the stadium for the Rampage show, and that's what you're gonna get. He's basically, we all know what's coming, but the pop is going to be amazing. What is it going to do in the future? I'd imagine that it will increase. It will bring a lot of people who love him into the fold, and that will affect ratings. Now, do they need help with the ratings at the moment? Not particularly. They're holding, around 1 million. They've just had a streak of 1 million's broken, but it's still a very high 900,000. The demo is still quite low. That young group is quite high. It actually beat Raw the other week. So, this week it was higher than Raw. So, and that's something that they're doing now. So, in terms of what it's actually going to do, is it's just going to sell their name to people, and that's basically it. I don't think in long term it's going to be as a big, it'll bring them to the next stage, okay, of it'll be a more recognizable brand. If you go around and you talk to and I actually did this, I spoke to someone who occasionally watches wrestling, and I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, oh, yeah, I've been watching a little bit of WWE. And I was like, oh, what about AEW? And he's like, about what? And, we might laugh about it, but we're in a small bubble, okay? It is still a new thing. WWE still owns wrestling. As much as we all, would like it to be different, it is the household name of wrestling.
Yeah.
What this will do, and the real effect it will have, is it will it will help get AEW to the next level of recognizability, which is what they need to, continue to build their numbers, build their brand and everything like that.
Yeah. And
that will all be good for them. Is it going to be as good as we hope? Obviously, Fightful's reporting that from the people who are watching him do his training, that he's looking really good in the ring. He's been training for quite some time now. So, it's good to see him taking it serious. And he said himself that he was offered originally a deal from AEW from day one, but he didn't want to do it because he wanted to see if it was going to be around. Mm-hmm. He literally said the other day during an interview that he feels that the wrestling world needs a punch in the lower regions. I won't say because we're a family friendly podcast here. So, but the lower regions of a male genitalia is where the wrestling world needs a punch. So, all in all, it'll obviously be name recognition, and it'll be very much the same thing with Chris Jericho. Where you're getting this huge name recognition to bring it to the next level. Are we going to see a championship run with him? I actually don't know. You would imagine so. Like, why would you bring someone like CM Punk back out of retirement if you're not going to give him a title run? How long is he going to be with the company? Is this a long time, a couple of year thing, or is this a sort of a Ronda Rousey deal and he's only back for a year? How much does he have in his tank to do this? Obviously, he's named quite a few people he wants to work with. That's a very interesting list. The first name he's working with is going to be Darby Allin, and that just shows how much faith they have in Darby to put him in that position. So, yeah, all in all, what is AEW going to get out of it? More name recognition, more branding. They've bought the guy who could not be brought back into wrestling. That's what they did. And if you haven't noticed, but I have, during the last couple of weeks of commentary, they have been saying, and adverts that they've been doing for AEW, they've been saying we're the brand that gets you back, reignites your love for wrestling. Gets you back into wrestling. And it's a very common thing if you read the Twitter and online comments of people saying, I used to watch wrestling, but I stopped, but now I'm coming back again because of AEW. It's a very common thread and something that they are now obviously working with because it's the truth. And I know so many people who are doing that. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't be watching wrestling if it wasn't for AEW. I fell out of love with NXT just because, that's a whole nother thing. Raw, I only keep up with Raw because, it's kind of my job. SmackDown, again, I don't really have much of an interest in it, but I do try. So, if it wasn't for AEW, I probably wouldn't be watching wrestling. So, I think, and I know a lot of people personally who I've told, hey, I know you used to watch wrestling. Go and check out this match. Go and check out this person. I just had a friend who didn't know AEW. I sent him the Eddie Kingston promo, the first one he ever did, and said, listen to this. He listened to it and goes, sign me the F up. I'm in. So, and then we went and watched a couple of pay-per-views. We watched Double or Nothing together, and then he's going to come over here and watch All Out with me now. So, I think I've converted him.
CM Punk just adds that cool factor to it.
I think that's what I think personally. In ring and story-wise, Brian's going to add a lot more to it in terms of the mindset. He has got such a great wrestling mind,
right?
That's going to help these younger people. That's going to just add to that background stuff. I don't think that's what CM Punk's there for. I think CM Punk's there for name recognition, bringing the fans in. But Daniel's going to be there to not only wrestle and be great at it, but also help those younger talents and help that next generation. And I think that's, for me, out of the two, obviously CM Punk's got a lot of love, and he's one of my favorite all-time characters. I cannot wait to come on this pod next week and be like, he's back. But what's he offering? The name value is what he's offering. And I have rattled on way too much about this, but I could talk about CM Punk and numbers and stuff literally all day, so I'm going to mute myself.
Well, I'm sure we will get to that next week on the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. There's so much content we have for you, but Sergi, I'm going to give you the last word on this one. How is AEW going to use CM Punk to change the world of wrestling?
I think that the key to remember is that you begin how you mean to go on. He is coming in, we presume. He is coming in without it being really a surprise, but also without officially announcing it, but clearly with the intent to have a feud with Darby Allin, not with a name who was established before AEW existed, but for one of the people that we consider AEW originals. And most of the people that he has mentioned being interested in having matches with in just a theoretical way are younger wrestlers, newer wrestlers, and Anthony made the comparison to Chris Jericho, and I think it's a really great comparison. I think that regardless of whether I don't think that CM Punk needs the championship in the sense that simply beating CM Punk is a championship in a lot of the same ways that they've treated beating Cody. But that with or without the championship, his run is going to be a lot like Chris Jericho's. They're going to feed people to him to build him up, because you can't just start jobbing him to begin with, because you'll make him feel like, well, what was the point of that? But build him up and then use him to build up others. And that's a story of a year by itself. He's going to run roughshod for a certain amount of time, and then he's going to pay back. And that payback of him losing feuds to up-and-coming people is going to be incredibly valuable to each of those people, just as we saw that doing that with Chris Jericho was so valuable to, for instance, Orange Cassidy.
Yep. I think you are absolutely right, and that will be, in my opinion, the lasting legacy of CM Punk in AEW is the number of stars that he helps build. And we talk about, are these stars ready? Are they ready to go? Are they credible? Can we put them in title feuds? In my opinion, I think people ask that question too much. But if there is something to that, CM Punk can obliterate that problem. If do you have someone that you feel like is not ready to be a star, that you're not ready to put the title on? Have him beat CM Punk. Now they're ready. And that will be, if CM Punk can create 2 or 3 mega stars in AEW the same way that Kenny Omega is going to create Hangman Page as a mega star, the same way that Chris Jericho helped create Jon Moxley as a mega star. Not that Moxley needed a ton of help, but whatever help he did need, Jericho got him there. CM Punk can do the same, and the Young Bucks are going to do the same, and there's this kind of cyclical nature to AEW, the way that they have this planned out, and I think CM Punk will just add more fuel to that fire when it comes to doing that. I think that will be the lasting legacy. But we don't have that long to wait to talk about CM Punk's impending AEW debut. Either that, or we'll just be here on Saturday morning just totally stunned with nothing to say. So I suppose that is also a possibility. AEW could swerve us. I don't think that's likely, but I suppose it's possible. So, for all of the coverage around CM Punk, around AEW, around everything else as we get towards All Out, then keep it locked here, whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating, give us a review, subscribe, follow us over on YouTube. Subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. We got tons of great stuff happening over there. And of course, always check out the ProWrestlingMusings.com. There's always new stuff going up. I mean, we have so much new content going up every day. And it's all great stuff. I mean, I can't remember the last time we put up a bad piece. Probably the last one I wrote would have been the last time that we put up a bad piece on ProWrestlingMusings.com. So make sure you check that out. And today I'm going to leave you with this. This day in wrestling history. It is it would have been Bobby Eaton's birthday today. So he recently passed away, one of the fathers of modern tag team wrestling. So rest in peace to him. But today would have been his birthday. AEW did a little tribute before Dynamite, I think. Also, this day in history was WCW Road Wild 1999, known for Randy Savage versus Dennis Rodman in a street fight, Hulk Hogan versus Kevin Nash in a retirement match, and of course, I know when I said it, you all remembered this match. Billy Kidman, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio Jr. versus the Insane Clown Posse and Vampiro. I know you all remembered that match from this show. That did go down. So that happened this day in 1999. Thank you all so much again. Anthony, just real quick, tell the people where they can find you.
You can come find me at Anthony Down Under. My most recent article that I just dropped was like I said, it was in regards to pay-per-view rematches and looking at how many rematches were for each company over the first 6 months of the year. Some very interesting stuff there. So, yeah, give it a read. The SmackDown results for the numbers has just dropped. They did 2.499 million last night, which is just insane. It's actually the biggest number since February 2020 for any WWE programming. So,
wow, that's huge.
I was thinking that Rampage was going to be like about 500,000. If those numbers switched over, or any of those switched over, it might be a much bigger number. So, very big number. And my source for that one is TV Spoiler, by the way. So, if anything's wrong, go blame them. They just dropped that news about 5 minutes ago. So,
well, go follow Anthony on Twitter, because he will definitely have these things updated. I know he loves talking about ratings and stuff like that. So you can find him over on Twitter, and in about 2.5 minutes, you can go find him falling asleep, because it's very late in Australia right now. Sergi, please tell the people where they can find you.
Yes, I have a column called Styles Make Fights. I'm very proud of this column. I want more people to read it. So please check it out. Now, going through a little bit of a growing pains of, now we have this Rampage show, and there are oftentimes going to be matches that are not announced until Wednesday and then happening on Friday, which, I've always dropped Styles Make Fights on Monday or Tuesday or so.
Yep.
So what I've tried this week, and may be doing going forward, is doing the analysis on any last-minute matches for Rampage on Twitter. So my Twitter is Sergi.Alderman, I believe. I think. Let me double check.
Well, it'll be in the description as well. I think it is
just Sergi Alderman, no dot. That's my email that has the dot. No dots. SERGEI Alderman, ALDERMAN. That's and yes, if you look at the credits, that you'll also find it there on Twitter. I will also be sharing Styles Make Fight type analysis, especially last minute matches like that.
Yep.
And but also read the column. It's always well worth your time. You can find that very easily by going to ProWrestlingMusings.com, and I have a tab. Click on that tab. It'll take you to all of those columns. And once you're there, also click on my name so that you see any of my columns that aren't Styles Make Fights. You're hearing it here first, that I'm going to be starting a new series called Under the Learning Tree, talking about the heritage of pro wrestling and the passing of pro wrestling traditions from mentor to protege, and passing that through the across continents and across generations and centuries. Well, not centuries, but over a century. It's really a fascinating subject that I've always found very interesting, and that the first column along those lines should be dropping within the week or so.
We have seen privately some snippets of this new series. We've seen all of the spreadsheets and the crazy stuff that Sergi has done to work on this series. So it will be, in my opinion, one of the coolest things that the internet wrestling community has produced in a long time, detailing all this stuff. So you got to check that out. If you consider yourself a wrestling fan, you are going to have to check this out when it drops. So make sure you're following Sergi on Twitter so you know the updates. I have been Griff from GA. You can find me on my personal YouTube channel, General Admission Wrestling. While you're there, drop a subscription to the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. We got all kinds of cool stuff. We will be talking about Sergi's new series as that starts to drop. So there are all kinds of places that you can find that. But you know what? We will never, ever, ever not give you content. As long as AEW keeps providing us with all of the content that AEW is providing us, we will provide you with content from Pro Wrestling Musings. So make sure you find us everywhere we are. Until then, we'll see you next time. Enjoy your week. Enjoy AEW. We will be talking about everything in detail on the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. We appreciate you guys.